So, Tuesday. So, at this point, I'm not going to be repeating the same things. Oh, basically, as we've said, these classes are pre-recorded. We are streaming them live. We've edited for the, so you get the most amount of information in the least amount of time. We are live in the chat though, so ask any question. We'll respond you there. Today it's gonna be a lot of fun. Now, yesterday we did love, positive emotions. Today, we're gonna talk about sadness and suspense. Same structure of the class. You're gonna explain, define the style, harmony, orchestration, melody, etc. And then I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna compose the sketch. Then you're gonna have 10 minutes to compose your own sketch. Then I'm gonna be orchestrating it, and then you can then it's going to be the end of the class and you can orchestrate at your own pace. All right, that's pretty much the structure of the class over the next days. Now at this point, each day one style. Today we're going to do two styles, but started with love, then today we're going to do sadness and suspense, then the next day we're going to do action with intensity, adventure. We're going to touch on all these styles. It is going to be intense. What I recommend you is to not just passively look at the class and that's it. Do the exercises, do the sketches, orchestrate the music. Is practice and we improve by practicing. So follow along. I'm just basically taking the lead and then challenging you to do the same thing over the next day. Practice. It doesn't matter if you get the result does not matter. It doesn't matter if it sounds fantastic. It doesn't matter if you didn't quite nail the style. It's not a problem. We are practicing. Again, music is practice. Let's get down to it. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So before we get started, just a quick mention. This class, why we put two styles in one day. The reason is because once you understand positive emotions or love, understanding sadness and suspense is relatively easy. I don't wanna say things now that I'm gonna repeat later on, but basically, once you understand love, and we're talking those major chord diatonic melodies, sadness is going to be very similar in terms of orchestration, but harmonically, we're going to go from major mode to a minor mode. That's it. Same type of melodies, but it's going to be a minor scale, things like this. And suspense is going to be similar to sadness, but with less harmonic changes, and it's going to be usually minor with a twist. Minor with a twist basically means adding a little bit of dissonance or extensions, things that will darken a little bit the tone. I'll explain, I'll develop on this, but for now, I just wanted to introduce these two concepts, and with that, let's get the class started. So, some of you have been here for a while. Some of you, this is the first time that you are doing MTCM. Some of you've already done this class, and I'm so happy to see you again. And so my question for you, and you don't have to participate if you don't want, but I would like to hear from you. So when you sit down right in front of your studio and you have to compose, what is, because that will help me shape the class, today's class. What is the thing that you struggle the most with? Is it you already have the template but you don't know how, what to do with it to compose in that specific style, or is it rather more like you have like technical struggles, like I have the library but I don't know how to make it sound right, or I don't know how to combine the different instruments, or I don't know how to load these instruments, or I don't have the instruments, or I struggle with the sequencer, or with what I would like to hear from you.
Well, I struggle with coming up with the original theme. And maybe it's not just the chords or anything. It's more like having a base that you can build everything else up on. Because if you're going to orchestrate, you're going to add all these instruments. It's really, you kind of want that original initial theme to be clear and concise. Because I don't know, it's like finishing a fine furniture. If you have a crappy surface to start with, every layer you put on top just gets worse and worse and worse. So it's making that first theme or idea as concise as possible. It's hard to do that quick.
Yeah. So
for me.
So you're talking about the moment that you sit down and you have just a piano
Yeah.
and then coming up with the theme, with the melody, with the motif or whatever it is that you'll develop later on, right?
Right.
All right, cool. Okay, good one. All right. You don't. So you didn't have any. So if you had the theme, you're saying that developing the theme is not. It's not a struggle for you. It's, that's not the hard part for you. It's coming up with something that's meaningful, that has potential to be developed later on.
Right.
Okay.
Because you want to really enjoy it, and so if that theme falls flat, then it's not as fun to orchestrate to.
Yeah.
But following up on what you said, the actual orchestration, well, that's difficult too. That has its own issues or barriers, and it's how I could just add a bunch of instruments, but how do you layer them? Bring them in slowly, create movement, have the piece develop naturally.
Okay. Yeah.
And I guess a lot of that's practice. And this is my first time really doing it hardcore. So I worked on the love theme, and it was humbling.
Yeah, right. It's that's it, at some point sort of it becomes an art, because it's all those things that you mentioned, right? It's like the development is it's hard by itself, but doing it in a natural way, so you're using the orchestration correctly, etc. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else?
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark. It's Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
For me, having gone through the first course, or the third course for you, but my first course of MTCM, I learned a lot along the way, but I also learned a lot about what I don't know. What I continually struggled with, melodies fine, I can come up with melodies and motifs. It's the harmonic progression for me. I take hours and hours and hours finding the right chord progressions.
Yeah.
I know they're there. I just have to dig and dig and dig and dig, and eventually I find something that is kind of what I was looking for. So I've got it in my head what I want, but finding it is the problem. So if there's any way of sort of short-circuiting that arduous process and coming up with, I don't mean recipes for harmonic progression, because obviously we want it all to be individual on our own. But just some sort of better insight, I guess, is what I'm hoping to get out of the course this time around on chord progressions, and how, because the harmonies are the things that really give it the emotion, and hit those wow moments. So it's finding those chords, finding the chord progressions for me.
So what do you mean with you have it in your head, but you don't know how to get it out? Meaning, do you already hear what you want, and it's just trying to find those chords, what the chords are?
Yeah. So typically, I guess my workflow is I'll usually find a motif and a melody that works, and I'll get some sense of how long it is and whether I need to repeat and vary it, and I'll sort of come up with that first, throw some piano, in as bass, and maybe a few chords here and there to sort of get me going. And then I know the emotion that I want that melody to convey, because it's implicit in the way the melody works. Finding the chords to then really give it that lift and get that emotion out of it, that fits with the idea of what the melody is, and how those chords actually underlie that melody and help it work properly and help that emotion come out, above and beyond just, okay, it's major and it's minor. And the progression, really, it's not so much, do I throw in a 7th, a 9th, 13th, 6th, flat and 6th, whatever it is. It's the progression across that gives you that emotion, and then potentially moving between different keys and different progressions, and sometimes substituting chords in from different modes. And when you find that chord and you get it in there, and it hits that note of that melody, and you think, wow, that's what I've been looking for the last 24 hours.
Yeah, right.
It's taken me that long to find it. There must be a better way than just hunting around randomly.
Yeah. Well, just even though it becomes easier with time, it's just so just so you don't feel like you're struggling too much with this. It always is. It's you're always trying to find the right chord, even though so you may see some people that is faster, and but still there's always that, you're always looking for sort of thing, like searching for, that chord. So anyway, that's good insight. All right, cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Hey, Mark.
Hey.
Hi. Robert here.
Hey, Robert.
Yeah, I'm quite new to creating orchestral music, and I've been watching your December Love video.
Uh-huh.
And then I noticed, like, in your little 1 minute example that you made, there's already a lot of development going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started analyzing it, and I basically noticed, okay, it's basically just the theme twice, but there was so much development, and that's really what I'm out to learn. Like, how do you use dynamics and different instruments and still make it sound like one, but still with all the development in it.
So development, and then so you're quite new at orchestral music. What's your so how comfortable do you feel with the orchestral instruments and the orchestral families and how to use them and all that? Or is that something that stops you from not knowing how to develop, or is it something that helps you or makes you struggle a little bit more in this specific style?
I'm just trying things.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I'm just normally I'm used to create rock tracks and tracks like that, and I'm really comfortable with those arrangements, and I really know how to use guitars and keyboards and drums and bass and to combine them to create something. So I'm trying to see the orchestra kind of like a band, but I'm not sure if that's a useful way to go about it.
What is your interested in orchestral music? Is that you wanna start your career in film music, or is it just because you wanna add orchestral elements to your rock music?
No, I really want to learn this style as well.
The style.
Yeah, to
Okay.
really go into the orchestral film music and stuff like that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So
thing that I've needed, which I feel like you've given us in the last December class, and I'm just saying it just so you know that it works for me. It's very helpful. I've done lots of orchestration and lots of these things. The thing for me that was most difficult was, how do I start something new off from scratch? And I think what you've been giving us with style definitions and just ideas for okay, with the action mid intensity, you start with a motor with these cellos. I was like, okay, now I can start something. So it's those kinds of things that have been really helpful for me, and would love to continue to
awesome.
learn more.
Oh, yeah, awesome. That's great feedback. Because sometimes I'm like, this is just a way to start, right? And it's maybe not the perfect one, but sometimes it helps having it there. And sometimes I was like, should I include the steps or not? Because so sometimes helps, sometimes limits. And so your feedback is just very, very helpful, because for me, a reason to continue giving the steps. You need just time.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful, because then we get sort of practice creating something, and then later we can come up with, okay, maybe I want to do the same kind of thing but with a different instrument.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. All right. So Sadness, if we compare Sadness to Love, which we saw last week, which is here, I'm gonna put Love here number 1, and then Sadness gonna be number 2. It's pretty much the same. This is Love, this is Sadness. And the tempo is gonna be very, very similar. Maybe Sadness a little bit slower, right? This is Love, this is Sadness. Maybe Sadness a little bit slower. And I like comparing the styles, because at the beginning it's easy, right? Love is just major chords, blah blah blah, and all these things, right? This type of melodies, this type of harmonies, and this orchestration. And then Sadness, I like to compare the last style, and then how it evolves, how the next one is an evolution of the last one. And especially this becomes handy when we are maybe in the style 11, that at some point the difference is very, very subtle. There are some times that the harmonic is sort of the same, but then depending on the orchestration, it changes the style, okay? So if for Love we had basically slow tempo, in Sadness is going to be the same. It's going to be slow tempo, mostly going to be quarter notes and eighth notes, and tempo will range 44 to 90. Just a reference, can be a little bit slower, can be a little bit faster. Usually we're going to be talking 3-4-4-4, something like this. Mostly in terms of harmony, it's going to be the same again. Now, Love was mostly major modes, right? In this case, it's going to be mostly minor modes. That's going to be the biggest difference. So minor modes, most of the time it's going to be root position. So right, this is the first, so C minor, F minor. This is the major fifth, in this case dominant. But first and second inversions can occur actually frequently when it helps for us like a stronger voice leading. Right? So I was doing like C minor. This is G minor, G minor, but it's the first inversion. This is F minor, first inversion again. And you could see how the bass was doing. Sort of thing, right? And that's another thing that's gonna help to the style, like the descend, like the slow descending melodic lines. Those things will help to the style. So now, extensions and resolved suspensions. In the pre-training, let me see if I've got a pre-training, yep, right here. So in the pre-training, we saw like the simplification of all this, which was, hey, major chords, positive emotion, minor chords, negative emotions. If we connect them like the diatonic tonal traditional way, love, positive emotions, and if it's minor chords, sadness. Now, if we don't connect them the traditional way, like we do, we move it by thirds, like parallel movement, going to another key, etc., right? Then with major chords, magic, fantasy, blah, 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 all these things, right? Now, and then we talked about adding extended notes, which is what we're talking about here, right? Extensions and resolved suspensions. So we said that, when it's a major chord, it adds character and sometimes enhances the positive emotion. When it's a minor chord, it adds a little bit of tension. So, and it works great for when we transition from this sadness to something like more like suspense, action, mid intensity, and stuff like this. So going back to sadness, yes, we can add extensions and we can add some dissonances here and there, and it's completely fine. But if we do too much of that, we will start transitioning into suspense. Now, suspense has another series of it's got other things like the melody is not as thematic and it's more motivic. We will get there today in a bit, but just be careful. Yes, we can add. Right. This wasn't like a 9 really. It was more like so this is the F. Sorry. C minor. This is the 9th of the F minor chord. It's more like a 9 that resolves to an 8, right? This type of things. So just be careful not to add. So these extensions work well. Is the 6th. But just be careful, not because we're gonna start transitioning to the next style, which would be suspense, when we start adding extensions and dissonant notes. All right, so it's common suspensions: 7 to 6, 6 to 5, 4 to 3, and then modulations are commonly used more often than love. Even though love can modulate as well, definitely, and this is a good way to develop the music. Right, cool. So, melody. It's very similar to love. So for love we had, in general we don't have that much, you know, we don't do those jumps. Yes, we can do them, but then it works more like an accompaniment. If we have a melody, usually we'll have things more like passing tones and all this, like. This type of thing, right? So with Sadness, it's going to be the exact same thing. Right, this type of thing. So mostly minor modes. Themes are frequently restated when modulating, mostly diatonic, predominantly using chord tones. And if we're using non-chord tones, we're going to be passing tones, neighbor tones, and suspensions. And the counter melody can occur, and when used, we'll use rhythmically this exact same thing that with love, rhythmically contrasting just to create separation. Okay, now the orchestration. Okay, so orchestration again, as with love. If we reduce this to the minimum, we would start thinking piano and strings, basically. Piano and strings is strings giving support and piano doing the melody and a little bit of movement, right? Which basically means like the mid lower strings doing the support, doing the background and the background element, and then a lyrical instrument. A lyrical instrument can be a piano. It can be a woodwind, a solo woodwind instrument. It can be a solo string instrument like a cello, beautiful for Sadness, right? It can be a solo horn. I'll read this in a second. Just bear with me. Now this is if it's small, right? So if it's small, then we're gonna have that. If it's a little bit bigger, then we will go to for the melody, we will transition from that lyrical instrument to maybe a section. Instead of having like a solo cello, we can have the cellos section, right? Or the violins one, or the viola, which has a little bit more of a darker type of tone than the violins. It's a little bit brighter. Even though the violins will work just fine. We can have maybe let's just stop there. So that's for the melody. If it's a little bit bigger, instead of a lyrical instrument, we'll have maybe like a section. For the accompaniment, we will have the strings, the mid-lower strings, and then we may add a little bit more so we can give support to that bigger statement in the melody. And maybe it's the strings and some soft low brass, like maybe the trombones and the tuba, or maybe the strings and some soft woodwinds, like maybe like the clarinets and bassoons, right? So that's for the background. Now, if it goes bigger, for the melody, we're gonna have a combination of that section, like violins 1 or violins 1, 2, and violas, with that lyrical instrument that we had at the beginning. Maybe we can have the violins 1 and a flute, or the violins 1 and 2 and two flutes, on a flute and oboe. Maybe we have the violins 1 and 2 in octaves, and then we have woodwinds in octaves as well, right? So that's for a bigger statement. And in that case, for the background, to give support to that, we may have the mid-lower strings. Maybe we can maybe at the beginning we had like the violas and cellos, and then this time we can have violas, cellos, and double basses to expand and to make the background bigger and like a bigger statement. And we can add the low soft brass and woodwinds at the same time. So maybe we have the violas, cellos, and double basses doing the background, and we have the violins 1 and 2 doing the melody in octaves. The violin 1 and 2 in octaves for the melody is doubled by some like high woodwinds, maybe flutes and oboes, and that would be enough. Maybe in a climatic moment we can add a trumpet, right? But in general we would keep that way. Maybe we can add a piano to that. We can have a counter melody with the horns section, maybe. And then for the background, we can have maybe the violas, or we can have the horns and the violas for the counter melody. And for the background, we can have the cellos and basses with some support of the low brass like trombones and tuba, and bassoons maybe. So that's basically what it says here. So for harmonies can be played either by the string section alone, or a combination of lower strings, viola, cello, and bass, low brass, and low woodwinds, depending on the size, right? Now, harmonies are often enhanced by the harp playing arpeggios, so to add a little bit of movement, we can have the piano or the harp, or piano or the harp. We can have the celesta sometimes here and there. Careful with the celesta because it helps creating that magic fantasy type of sound. It works with love as well because it has a little bit more a brighter type of tone. The harp works better for sadness. Celesta could work if we use the lower register, which is not as common for the celesta, but it has that a little bit weirder, like darker tone. Now, if it goes bigger, we can add choir, but careful with choir because it can sound ominous sometimes, and we want that. So choose the right word or the right vowels. Try not to make it too intense, so it's gonna be soft choir in general. So like M's are gonna work better than A's and O's because it just makes it bigger and more ominous. M and U's will make it softer. And then for the melody, again, we can start with a lyrical solo instrument, a woodwind, a horn, piano, a solo violin, all that. And then if it's a little bit bigger, we can have maybe an entire section, violins 1 or 2, or the violas, the cellos. If it's a little bit bigger, then a combination of the entire section and the lyrical instrument. And then if it's even bigger, then we can have multiple strings in octaves plus woodwinds doubling and all that. Cool. All right. So the step by step. So there are two ways of doing this. You either I generally come up with the melody first, and then what I do is I'll come up with the melody and then the harmony. I'll do a piano sketch, and then after I do that, usually I either record the background, whatever is gonna be there in the background, maybe the mid-lower strings, and then I re-record the melody on top. But I'll use the melody from the sketch as reference. Sometimes I just record the background and I don't have the melody as a reference, but pick the way that works best for you, but understand that when, if we created the score and the orchestra was recording, they are performing the melody and the background at the same time, and they are listening to each other. So there is no melody without background or background without melody. They go together. So they emotionally go together. So it's important, like if you record the melody for the sketch, to treat it as a sketch and then record the background, then re-record the melody, like responding to the background, or the other way around. Make sure that you have a melody that works and then do the background for the melody. So then make sure that they go together, all right? So again, this is the step by step. You can change the order of 1 and 2. Now, for those who are here for the first time, I've got this thing, which is a way of sort of like describing the different musical layers. I like this. It's just how my brain works. When I'm listening to music, it's just, and I'm sure it happens to you as well. You're constantly analyzing what's going on, right? And so, which sometimes makes it very hard to concentrate on other things when there's music in the background. My brain always goes like, okay, there's an element that's creating direction, whatever it is, right? There's something that's the most, the most important thing, or like the biggest statement, whatever, like something that's creating direction, that's moving me from point A to point B, right? Like, right? What I just did, the thing that created direction wasn't this, was not this. No, it's whatever takes you on a journey, right? Usually it's gonna be a melody, but it could be something else. It could be something like, it could be it could be a chord progression that starts a little bit like more open chords to more dissonant chords. It can be a crescendo, it can be an accelerando, it can be a swell, it can be whatever thing, right? And it's not like it's something that creates direction for like 30 seconds. You know, we've got something that takes us in a short journey from here to here, and then there may be another element, like, I don't know, like an orchestrated stinger sort of thing that's creating that crescendo that's maybe 7 seconds, right? So those things change as we are developing the idea, right? But there's always there's not always, you don't have all these elements all the time, but sometimes we have that element which creates direction, which takes us on a journey from point A to point B, right? Then we've got something that creates movement, right? If we've got this, we may have an arp doing something like, in the background, that's just it's just creating movement, right? It could be something more obvious like percussion, something that's creating sort of like the pulse or the motor of the music. And then there's the other element that usually it's not as noticeable and it's not that obvious, but it's the background. They call it glue sometimes, right? It's anything that sits behind the mix that it's there. We don't pay attention to it unless you focus on, you know, like listening and see exactly what elements there are in there. It's super important because it's what sort of like, it's like what connects all the elements. It's there, we don't notice it, but if we take it away, it's like, oh, now something's missing, right? So that's the background. So those would be the three main elements. Then we have enhancers and bass. You can read this later on if you want. But basically, you do not need to have all the elements. You could have a beautiful strings melody, just the melody. Right? It's just that's creating direction, and we don't need anything else. So depending on the outcome, the emotional outcome of the piece, we will choose to use one or the other or the three of them at the same time, or the five of them at the same time, if it's, you know, this big climatic moment. But it's a way of seeing the music and lowering the pressure on, you know, so focusing on what chord should I use, right? What progression, what melody, how do I combine them together? And so take a read at this if you want. And when I have the step by step, I always talk about these things, right? I come up with the background first, then the direction. It's like, so basically, it's usually in this style the background would be maybe the harmonic progression, and then direction, maybe it's the melody in this case, and then create the bass, like extend the texture if needed, and then add movement, again optional, like perhaps arpeggios, stuff like this, or the piano accompaniment, and then sparkle and ear candy, like if you need like big climatic moment, you may have you know, like a cymbal swell that connects one section to the next one, stuff like this, right? So that's that. Now this is the thing that you can change, right? So people is like, why do you do the chords first and then the melody? So sometimes, like, I'll set the tempo and then I'll come up with a sketch, and then I'll do the chords underneath of the sketch. So it's like the strings texture, the strings background texture, and then I'll record the melody on top, so the melody flows better with background. But you can change the order of these two if this works best for you. Okay. So that's it. So that's that. Any question? Because I'm gonna compose a short passage, and then I'm gonna give you 5-10 minutes to sort of experiment with what we've talked about. All right. So I think. So let's talk. I just wanted to do like a quick mention, real quick, about timbre and how important that is. In fact, in the pre-training, which is here, I mentioned when orchestrating how, you know, that links how to combine the different instruments, and I said, hey, group by color, right? That's the most important thing. But if you don't know what instruments have a similar color, well, you've got a few tips here. Maybe you can doubled by like similar structure, like brass instruments will work good together, like a brass built instrument, like a brass built melodic instrument will go well with a brass built percussion instrument because it's similar quality. Then you've got the waveform, and then the emotion, right? So the emotion I want to talk about. So sometimes you know that one instrument, like using a specific technique, creates a specific timbre, and that timbre works well for one specific emotion, right? And so, like for example, like the cello sul ponticello tremolando, right? They create that eerie type of sound that maybe works for horror type of thing, right? And then maybe the violins in the low register using the G string, which is the warmer of them all, and maybe sul tasto, which is so let me just show you the violin. So this is a violin. Let me just go here. Yeah. So this is sul ponticello. This is the so sul ponticello would be sliding the bow closer to here, and that creates like an eerie type of sound, and then bowing the bow closer to here would be sul tasto, and then this produces a warmer type of sound. Now there's a technique that's flautando, which is moving the bow real fast, but not like a tremolo. Like tremolando is with pressure, flautando is without pressure, with like big, fast, long bows, and it creates a flute-like sort of sound, and it's very, very warm, and it's very, very nice. So that type of sound with minor chords and stuff like this works with this, would work good with this style. So I don't have it loaded here, but let me just, I'll load it. Let me just, I'm gonna duplicate this one. I'm gonna move this one here. Flautando. So I'm just gonna load it. I'm gonna get rid of this guy, and I think I have it. Give me 1 second. It's here. I'm gonna go samples. Flautando right here. It's an old. Yeah, this will do. Cool. So let me see. This is what I did in the other class. It's sometimes hard for me not to do the same things. What I had, just so you know, I'll try not to repeat, but what I did the last time was, it was something like, it was recording. Was. Something like this, which, let me see if I have it somewhere. Yeah, right here. That's what I had, which is this, and I'll try to come up with something different, so it's not the exact same thing. But this was C minor, right? And then the melody, and then I had the G minor, first inversion. So C minor, G minor, F minor, and then E flat major sort of thing. But it's like an F minor that resolves to E flat major sort of thing, or an E flat major with 9 that goes to the 8 sort of suspension. And then here's like 9th, parallel 9th, which is weird, but Works. So that's what I had. Let's see, I'll come up with something else, and then I'll give you some time to try to. I really like this descending line. Sort of thing, but I'll see. Yeah. Oh, I like this. I don't know where it is, but I like it. So this is what I just did, this retrospective recording. I like the idea, but I figured, I don't know if I'll be able to come up with this again. And so I just hit R, which is the key that I've got assigned for retrospective recording. And let's see if this was. Yeah, sort of. Okay. So what we did was C major. So C minor. Sorry. Boom. So we had this chord. So right. So this is C major. C minor. Yeah. Do rem. So boom. Do rem. So something like trem, tirom, torem. It's gonna be so something like this. Dorem, tirom. This is a G minor. You know what? We could have something like G. So if we have the problem of having an A flat major, which is what I had, is that it takes us a little bit out of sadness, right? It's a little bit uplifting. So if I add the seventh, the major seventh here, what we are doing here is that it's like having the C minor chord on top of an A. So it's a mixture of an A flat major and then C minor. So it's not as uplifting. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add the with major 7. No. And then what did I do? And then it's a little bit weird, but do rem. So we've got the F. You don't have to go that F minor. So F minor with first inversion, and then resolves to there's a G with like this the 6. something like this. Don't. Let me see. Oh, what we could do is we could keep this sort of like the G sort of thing, and then it goes down like this, right? So this is an A flat. That's nice because here we would just lower this voice here and we would keep these other two voices. Let me see. I think I'll just go C minor here. C minor. Like a second inversion, right, with the G. So, I'm gonna record this again one more time. I'll move you out of the way. Let's see, there's. That's it. And then, there you go. Oops. Right. Nah. We've got an ascending line here, da da dun 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 sort of thing. The melody doesn't progress that much, but you see, this is not a great. I don't think this is a great motive, a great theme, a great melody. But we'll see what we can do out of this, right? Because sometimes a good tune is a good tune, right? I don't think this is a great tune, but I think it has some potential for development because we've got this repeated motif, right? This is repeated like several times. And let's see, then we can develop. Right? I'm not very proud of this. It took me forever though. Cool. I'm gonna give you some time. 10 minutes. Just for the 20 seconds. All right, so I'm gonna re-record this with tempo and all these bars and beats. Let me see. That is fast. I'm gonna see a tempo. Tempo track up here. A little bit slow. Yeah, cool. So 1, 2, 1. Ah. Maybe I'll do it. Yeah, okay. So I would have to change the key, the time signature and all that, but I'm not gonna do it so we move faster. One, two. So we have a 2-2 here, and I can do it. Add track, signature. Then here would be is a 4/4, yes, and this would be a 2/4, and then here a 4/4. Whoa, what was that? 2/4, yes, and then here, so. Exactly, and here 4/4 again. I'm gonna record the strings, and then I'm gonna develop it real quick. Right. Yeah, I think the melody could be the piano, and then the second time around, we're gonna develop this a little bit more. Let me see.
Can we see a keyboard?
Yeah. Let me just move this here. Cool. So what I did, I'll do this one more time. Ah, dang. I messed up at the end because it was very, very hard. No, because it's very similar to the other sketch that I did for the other class, and my brain goes there. You know what? No. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I did. So we've got the melody once, and then I did this real quick. I repeated the harmonies a couple of times, and then I'm gonna be developing. I've got an idea in mind. So I've got the development already figured out. That's why I was able to record all this, and also I don't wanna make this class super long. So for now we have. Strings are doing the exact same thing that the left hand of the piano is doing in terms of harmony and voicing. Maybe if I had... Let me just load my strings real quick. File, import, tracks archive. Yep. It's gonna take a second. All right, cool. Strings. Out. Oops. Now where is this? Yeah, something like this. Okay, so this basically is the motif. Repeated and variations, so it's in sort of like creating movement, and it's in the background. It's very, very soft. And I'm gonna go. There's gonna be 16 notes. Quantize a little bit. It's very, very soft and increases. Let me just compress the velocities a little bit. so that's sort of like the first repetition, not exactly. Maybe here if we had a cello. Maybe, let me see, if I did like a cello solo. I don't know how this is gonna go, let me see. Let's see. So here's Alright, it's not perfect because the patch is not working very well, but it's just a cello solo, and basically I just expanded the motif, so it's C, D, E, C, right? So basically that's what the cello did, C, D, E, flat, and C. It's not perfect because some of the notes didn't sound, but it's okay. I'm going to enhance this a little bit with some lower strings. There's a little bit of, when I quantized, something went wrong here. Enhance the low with low strings. So just add a little bit of low ends with the sort of like the cellos here. And now for the last repetition, sorry. We could do something a little bit bigger. So we've got the melody. Let me see what. Yeah. Oh, I don't remember. I didn't remember all this. Just quantizing a little bit. Yeah. Tiki-taka. perfect, but this drop here, that doesn't quite work, and I would have to prefer it and all that. And I'm not gonna finish it, but you see how this is going. I'm gonna enhance the low end here with the strings. Too low. I had a little bit of movement here and there. If I had some, for me, I would prefer this to be the R, but I don't have it loaded. So yeah, this is sort of how it goes. This is not finished at all, and I rushed a few things, and it's not perfect, and the cello line doesn't sound good. But maybe I can replace this. No, that doesn't sound great. Maybe.
Well, to me, this is the really interesting part, because you're taking that theme which you laid out, and you're not entirely happy with it. Whatever, that's fine. But the way that you're developing it is super cool, and that's awesome. Like, I'd like to hear what you may do with it after this.
Yeah.
Like what your plans are.
Yeah.
What ideas are.
So, yeah. Peter, he tells me, I love seeing you struggle. It's like, cool, all right. So the plan here, this works. This is the first part, like the intro. It's piano and strings. So I would like to introduce the arp of the second repetition, like the arp here. Tun tin tan, tun tin tan, or something like this. And then here, we've got the low strings coming in. I'd like to prepare that entrance a little bit with something else. So I could prepare this with so these are basically the double basses coming in, right? So instead of coming in with the downbeat with the A note, maybe I'll introduce. Yeah, it's work. So yeah, just introduce it a little bit more. Then so improving the cello line for sure. Oh, I lost it. Maybe I can double this with the. So that was a cello solo. So maybe two cellos and do, re, do, one resolves down, the other one does the fifth above, something like this. And then for the end, just making it a little bit bigger. And building on that crescendo that would, you know, sort of like, so that this drop here is like, it's not like prepared, there's not like a crescendo that sort of like prepares like the cliffhanger moment. So I will work on this a little bit. Let me see. No, that last one should be a G. Nah. No. So yeah, enhance this part a little bit more. Let me see what I would add here. I just broke. I don't know what happened, but the tempo. I would have the arp a little bit more here. We've got the full strings. I would double the do melody with the high strings with flutes to thicken that layer a little bit more and to color that string sound. At the moment it sounds a little bit too thin. We could have the min octaves, but we've got the piano already doing its own thing. So that's why I have it up, you know, above the piano. It sounds thin, but with a flute or a couple of flutes would thicken the sound a little bit, and I don't think we need the octaves.
Sorry, Mark,
yeah, go ahead.
just repeat, were you talking about adding the flutes to double the melody?
Yeah, that melody, the high strings melody. I don't know what happened, but the session just broke a little bit, and the tempo is all messed up. So I'm not gonna play it back. But yes, the flute doubling that melody. Maybe we could have the bassoons doubling the descending low strings line, just to add a little bit of weight there as well. We've got the piano with the repeated notes doing this. We could have the arp doing arpeggios. So then yeah. And then so something like this for the arp, or maybe ta ta ti ta ti ta ti ta ti, something like this. Maybe we can to add a little bit more of to make it a little bit more sad and more a little bit more tragic. We could have the tremolo strings, like tremolo, this layer here with the harmonies. So we started with flautando, right? Very, very, very soft, and then we added just the regular strings. It opens the sound. Then we added the lower strings, thickens the texture. So at some point there, before the drop, before the cliffhanger moment, we could have in the background moment, the harmony here, we could have the tremolo strings mixed with the sustained strings. So it's not like just tremolo strings, right? It just adds a little bit to the texture. And with the orchestra, that would be done dividing the strings. So like if we have this, which is the background, and we have, for example, here we've got violin 1, or maybe the violin 1 section is doing the melody, right? And maybe we have here violins. Let me see. So maybe this is cellos and double basses, and here we have violins 2, right? So divisi, and then viola. We could divide the viola in 2, right? And some of them do sustained notes, and the other do tremolo. And then we can have the violins doing the sustained note here, the half of the violins 2 doing this sustained note here, and then the other half of the violins 2 doing this tremolo note here. Or maybe we can get rid of this note, and then we can have the violins 2 doing half of them doing sustain, the regular sustained note, and the other half doing tremolo, and then the same thing for the viola, and the same thing for the cellos. The double basses, I wouldn't do that because it just darkens the sound too much. So something like this, that's a little bit of, makes it a little more tragic and more emotional sort of thing in a sad way. And then here, the last chord, instead of, maybe we could have it, concertino for this last chord, timbre change again for that last soft chord, or maybe flautando again, something like this. But I think sortino, and this works great having this cliffhanger 2 beats and then the last chord, because it's the time that they would need to position the with samples, not a big deal, right? But if it was a real orchestra, that's the time that they would need to put the moods on the strings. And yeah, I just saw some ideas, but definitely the first thing that I would go for is that melody. In the high strings, I would double it with woods, because right now it's a little bit thin, and the samples are not cutting it at the moment. And that's another thing. I'm syncostrating this. I'm not orchestrating it. And syncostrating is orchestration for sample libraries. So in a real orchestra, that melody with the violins would sound beautiful. A little bit thin, but nice. With samples, sometimes depending on the library, some of them sound better than others. In this case, yeah. So it's like if I double it with flute, it's gonna sound good, because I know that the flute in that range and that library that I'm gonna use, the legato sound very natural and sound very nice. So some of the things that I do sometimes is like what I could do with that melody, which is here, is the high strings. I would have the arp repeating that ton, ten, ten. So ton, ten, tin, ton, right? Just the first note. And that, because this sounds thin and they sound great, because the transition, the legato doesn't sound very, very realistic. So if I had the arp here at the beginning of each note, what it does, it thickens a little bit, it adds color, but the purpose it's because I'm using samples and this specific library, this specific range doesn't really sound good. The ARP there hides the problem, which the problem here is transition, the legato transition between the different notes. So putting the ARP at the beginning of the attack of each note helps hidden, hidden the imperfections from the sample library. So as an orchestration, it makes sense. It adds color. But as a syncastration standpoint, that makes even more sense because it's hiding the problems from that specific library. So just some ideas, all right? I want to move the MTCM course a little bit, not just the learning the skill, but also how to use the things that you learned, right? To make a career out of the music that you learned, to make some money, maybe if that's what you want to do with music, or to start, I don't know, working on projects or stuff like this. So at the end of not at the end of each class, but I'll try to not just teach the how to compose skill, but also sort of like inspire a little bit on how, just giving you some ideas of what you could do with this music. Okay, so now I've been preparing all this content. It's right there. It's not finished, so that means that it's not perfect. Okay, but I'll improve it as I go. Okay, sounds good. Right, so let's get this started. So today's class is about suspense. Let me see if I got everything. Cool, yeah. I've got this. So today's class is about suspense, and we are gonna be talking, right, the typical things, the tracks and the style definition, step by step. We'll compose a little bit as usual, but today it's gonna be not just how to compose suspense music, but also suspense music, but also how to make sort of like your music work for you and bring you passive income. And again, it's a very rough presentation, very rough slides, so some of them still have to make changes. So the class will have the typical part, how to learn to write in this style, and then I included a little bit of the pre-training here, just to how to go from this style to other style sort of thing, how to develop. So in each class, we'll do the typical thing that we do. We compose for like 10-15 minutes, like the 20 seconds cue or something like this. But also, I'll give you the sort of like clues or what you can do to sort of like expand that into like a full-blown like 2 minutes orchestral piece or something like this. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. So we'll include a little bit more of info about harmony orchestration, how to develop the theme into something longer. We'll talk a little bit about, the orchestral mocha production. We'll expand a little bit more the part of orchestral mocha production and getting rid of muddiness and creating a good sound. And also the fourth part, which I mentioned, how to make your music work for you, sort of thing. What to do with that music, all right? So that's it. Now, before we start, because we have some new students joined like during the last 2 weeks. I'm gonna also explain a little bit more. So I make an introduction. So this class will have an introduction before we start. It's like 5-10 minutes introduction, and then we'll start the style, and then I'll explain a little bit after the class. I'll explain a little bit where you can find more resources in the course and how the course works and all this. But at the beginning, I'm gonna explain, why we teach the way we teach. I'm gonna introduce a new concept to sort of like give a name to the way we do these classes. And at the end of the class, I'll explain a little bit. Well, at the end of the class, I'll explain a little bit where you can find more resources and information within the course to expand what we've learned here. All right. So that's sort of the plan. Cool. So let's get this started. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about. So this is sort of like the intro to MTCM for those who are new here, and for those who've been here already for some time. Just sort of like a refreshing why we do the things that the way we do. Okay, so there are two ways of learning music, right? There's like the traditional way, like the old traditional way of learning, which is there's nothing wrong with it. It's like it's what I did, right? They start. Well, I'll explain more about that in a second. But it's like this: studying 4 years orchestration, 4 years of harmony, 2 years of counterpoint, like the traditional conservatory or college type of thing. or just the other way, which is learning by doing. And there's nothing, it's just two options, right? I prefer this one these days. Maybe just because I'm the type, I don't have the kind of time that I had when I was a kid, when I was studying, right? So I prefer this one. It's more efficient, it's way more efficient. And it's nothing new, right? There are many composers who didn't have the formal training and they just did the thing and then learned as they went. So the example like Danny Elfman, right, Hans Zimmer, they didn't have they were musicians, they weren't composers. Like back then when they started doing movies, they had, there was that criticism and the hate from the industry. It's like, what's this guy doing Batman, right? When he's just a musician, right? And then he's one of the most respected composers nowadays, right? With more than 100 credits. But when he started, right, he did his first movies. I think his third or fourth movie was Batman, right? And he didn't have the ability to orchestrate like John Williams, right, or Alan Silvestri, Bruce Broughton. Well, he put together a team and he learned as he went. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe it's more efficient. Maybe it's a little bit more scary. Yes. But anyway, so quick story just a quick story about me and why we're doing the things the way we do. But when I started composition, I didn't even know about this film music thing. Just I composed music, right? And someday, one day my teacher told me, hey, there's these things called film music, right? Your music sounds a little bit like that. Maybe that's the path that you have to take. And so I got excited. And one day he told me, there's this school, right? It's USC. And maybe that's the type of school that you have to go after you finish the conservatory. And to me, that became my goal, right? I didn't know how to do it because I didn't have the money. I thought I didn't have the skills. So I contacted with some people who was there already, people from Spain who was there. So they wrote me a recommendation letter and told me exactly how to do it. And I learned and I moved to the US. And what happened is that when I got there, which my goal was to go, funny enough, to go to USC, right? And so when I got there, basically what happened is that was my goal. And when I got there, it's like, boom, that's my goal. And now what, sort of thing, right? And what I found is that basically it's like all these kids, right? Me, it's like these 20 to 30-year-old students who are there. It's like, it's not the best of the best, but it's a very, very niche type of thing, right? It's like film music. So so when I was in Spain, I was the guy with the sample libraries, right? I studied composition, but I liked this very much. So I was the one, everyone was using Finale, I was using Finale, but also I was doing the mock-up. So everyone was like, Mark knows how to make the music sound better and more realistic and all that, the orchestral music. And there, everyone used the sample libraries and sequencers and all that. So all the time it's like, I was just one more there, and I wanted to differentiate myself. I wanted to be the best. So basically, through the first semester, the first term was about the competition. Who's the best? Who does the best mock-up or who does the best recording? We recorded every 2 weeks. This is a great program. You go to record to Warner Bros. Every 2 weeks. It's just crazy with orchestras and all that. It's expensive. I got there because I got a scholarship, and anyway. But as after the first term, the second term, I was there and I started thinking. So when I finish this, I have no money, right? And I have to pay my expenses. That's the first thing. And the second thing is because I'm from Spain, I'm not from US, right? They give you like a 1-year extension. It's called OPT, and then that's meant for you to find jobs or gigs. And then with those gigs and with those credits, after a year, you can get the O1, which is like the artist visa. But you need to have credits to be able to have the O1 visa. So as I started the second term, it's a 1-year thing. So the second term, I started thinking it's not about the competition. It's not about being the best student. For me, it's about getting paid gigs so I can sustain my living in the US, and so I can actually get my visa 1 year after now. But I need some credits, right? So that was like my new vision, like my new force, sort of thing. And so I changed. It was a little bit tricky because I didn't have that much time, right? Because college, there was a lot to do, a lot of homework, and a lot of the recording sessions. You have to prepare the parts and the score and the parts and all that. So there was a lot to do. But I decided I have to make time to actually find projects, and so that's what I did. I found time. I did whatever I had to do, and I started looking for projects. So every evening when I got back from college, I started doing calls, afternoon, evening. Started doing calls. And basically it's the only thing that I knew how to do, just calling. And hopefully that gives you an idea. Just Googled online, and I found the database of, it was back then it was a, I think it was LA 411, which now it's part of Variety Insights. I don't know exactly, but it was just a database with production companies and phone numbers, right? And so I started calling, and luckily during USC I composed a lot of music, so I had a demo reel that I put together. So I started contacting. I received a lot of no's and all that, but sometimes I would send a demo reel, or I would go there and give them the CD back then. And so that's what I did for a while, and I got the movie. 1 month before finishing USC, I got my first movie, and that to me, that it didn't pay that much. But 1 year after that, I started receiving royalties for that movie. So basically, the way it works is when you do a movie. Most of what I do is TV movies and movies that go to Netflix and Amazon Prime. That's what I do, right? And so basically, every time that a movie airs in a channel, here in the US or international, the TV channel pays to your PRO, and then the PRO pays to you. That's basically how it goes, right? And so since then, I've been sort of doing 1-2 movies per year, which is not a lot, right? But I've got, but these days it works very, very well for me. It's a way of doing more with less. It brings me royalties and residuals that my music are producing automatically for me, and I can invest time on the things that I love most, which is, it's my family, my career, and the teaching. And so, yes, maybe I'm not the most active composer, but I compose every day. I do what I love, and that works for me. All right. Now, after that, what happened is that I did the movie, right? But it takes time for you to get royalty. Just so you know exactly, for that movie, it was my first movie. I was still in college, and the reason why I got that movie is because, well, I was contacting all that people. I got an interview. I went there, and they told me, that's how I got the movie. They told me, there's this guy who won't do the music for this movie because the budget is too low. All right? And I was 21 or 22, and I was at college and just wanted an opportunity. And back then I did like 20 or 25 shorts already that I did back in Spain. And usually short movies is like either free or very little money. And so they told me there's $2,400, so $2,400. So it's not a lot. It's 60 minutes of music, and you've got 30 days. But to me, that was a dream. It was like the first feature film. It was going to go to either Hallmark Channel or Hallmark or Live. So to me, that was like, wow, my first like US produced in Hollywood sort of thing. It's a TV movie. It's not something grand, but it was. So got the movie, did the movie, but the royalties don't come after a few years later. I got some other movies later on, but again, they didn't pay that much, and you have to make a living. So you have to. I wasn't able to find a movie each month, sort of thing, or a movie every 2 months. And so what I did is I found an assisting gig. So I started working as an assistant, but I hated that so much. I didn't like the boss that I had. And also I felt that I was making someone else, I was growing someone else's career, not mine. So nothing wrong with being an assistant. Sometimes being an assistant for long enough, then they give you the opportunity to do your own thing. But sometimes it takes like 4, 5, 6, 10 years. And you have to be very persistent to actually get the project from that person. Sometimes you get it right away. Sometimes it takes forever. Sometimes you don't get it, right? It's just the odds. So I hated it. I left the assisting gig. I didn't have money, so I went back to Spain. And when I went back to Spain, I experienced like the law of familiarity. Is basically, if you're around something long enough, you tend to take it for granted, right? So I had those movies, right, kept coming, and just doing, but I didn't kept looking for more movies. So at some point, basically, I started not having more movies, not having. Because if they notice, if they feel that you are not passionate about this as you were before, right? Then they'll. Where are you guys? Let me just mute you all. So, video. if they feel that you're not as invested, as passionate as you were before, and there's someone else, that contacts them, hey, I can do the music for you, and they see that's very passionate, sometimes they replace you from someone else. And because I was in Spain, I couldn't fight for those projects, and I wasn't fighting that hard as I was fighting before. I lost the connection with some production companies, and so I reached the point where I didn't do any of these movies for a year, and so that to me was like the moment of, something's gotta change, right? So I wanted my sort of like I won my career back, right? Because basically what happened is that back then I was teaching, right? I got a teaching gig. I was teaching piano, and just the teaching was making more money than the composing, right? Without the royalties, but it was doing more money. It was more like every month type of thing. So I got comfortable. All right. So I decided that I wanted my life back. Back then I was right here. I was already married, and so I decided I want to move. But it's not gonna be alone this time. It's gonna be the both of us, Alicia and I. And so we didn't have the money. We had a few $1,000 saved, but we didn't have enough money really to move here. I was teaching at Berkeley, but that's not I didn't have classes all the time, and I didn't have any projects aligned. So we decided if we can find 3 projects that I'll be working on when we move, then we'll move. So we started working the same thing, just cold calling and doing this, and then I found 3 projects, and then it's like, cool, we've got this project, let's move, and we moved. Now the problem that happened when I moved is that it just we didn't the numbers were incorrect, the math wasn't correct, so it was more expensive than that. So 2016 was way more expensive than 2009. I was here in the US studying 2009-10. 2016-17 was way more expensive than 2009-10. 2009-10 was after 2008. Right, and so everything was a little bit cheaper, and so 16-17 was way more expensive. We had to buy a car. We didn't have credit score, so we had to pay for like 2 deposits plus the first month of the apartment. So that's a lot of money, or at least for us was a lot of money. And in the projects fell through, and the Berkeley didn't. So when we moved there, I was in the. So the way Berkeley works is like 3 months classes. So I was teaching the 3rd month. Because it was September when we moved here, and then so I was teaching that last month, and then they didn't have enough students for me for the next term, the first 3 months, so I wasn't teaching, so no income, and so we lost a lot of the savings, so we couldn't continue. So it's like we have to either go back to Spain, or we thought about the idea of selling. I told this story already. I had an idea of a course to sell to Berkeley. It was an orchestral mock-up production course. Contacted Berkeley, like, hey, I've got this course. Do you want? Because they pay you to develop a course, and I knew how much they paid. It's like this is gonna be like 2-3 months of living expenses here. So if they buy me this course, it's gonna be great and all that. But they said this is a great course, but we are not developing new courses until 3 years, because back then Berkeley was sort of like merging like the real Berkeley and the online Berkeley to create like online degrees and all that thing. And so wasn't going to work out for me. So we decided to launch the course. It was the SBO course. The course, it's actually, you have access to this course. Those of you in the MTCM, you have access to the SBO course, Symphonic Virtual Orchestration. That was our first course. We released that course at the end of 2016, and we enrolled 32 people, and that was back at the end of 2016. Right now, we've got more than 3,000 people already taking our courses, which is great. And yes, back then, when we launched, it was because of the income. Right now, it's very, very different, right? Right now, it's about the impact. And that's very important, because what I found is that in 2018 and 19, we had like very fast growth, right? So when I was looking at the stats, and those of you who've been on the phone with me, those who've like the application to the course and all this, some of you have told this story. But what I was saying, so I was looking at the stats, and I was looking at all these numbers, and less than 8% of the people actually complete the courses. And back then, I was obsessed about, I need people to consume the content, because it's good content. I thought it's good content, they have to consume the content. That is important, right? And I didn't realize that what's truly important is not to read. It's not to read a book. It's not right. It's it's experiencing it in a way that gives you the transformation, the change, right? And so I started obsessing, because I started asking, so why didn't you finish the course? What's wrong with the course? There's nothing wrong. It's just I'm busy, right? I'm reading the course, and then it's like, oh, this is hard. I try, and then I struggle, and then I fail, and I don't like failing, right? I'm moving away from pain, sort of thing, right? And it's like I go away, and then I get busy with other things, and I don't revisit the course. It's like, cool, all right. It's like, this is why we created MTCM, because we wanted to overcome that problem. We wanted to give the transformation, right? We wanted to give the result to people. So it's like, how can I give the result, right? And so I started thinking, so when we created this, I started thinking about all these things, like how do I do, or how do other people do when they get this transformation, right? When they achieve, right? And so I realized that there are three things. There's always a framework, there's always a tool, and then there's a challenge, sort of like a journey. It's a series of steps that you have to take, all right? And so during this time, I kept doing things, right? I did movies that went to Netflix, Amazon Prime, that did like international distribution and all that thing. And while I was doing all these things, right? I thought if they see me doing things, then they'll do things as well. Because to me, it's not the teaching just because you learn. It's the teaching so you have something in your life that you like, and you work doing music what you love, and it's like it's working in something that brings you money, that allows you to, to have the type of life that you want while doing something that you love. I think it's great, and that to me, that's what we are trying to do, and that's why we keep improving the courses and making changes, because that's what we are trying to do, right? And so I was doing all these things. I thought if they see me doing these things, they'll get the skills that they need, and they'll try to replicate what I'm doing, right? But some didn't, but many students were stuck into the I need more skills mode, right? They were like and you can see that if you go to the Facebook group, right? Sometimes when I announce when we launch a new course, or when we relaunch a course, something like this, there's people that say it's a great course, but I don't have the time now because I've got this job, whatever, right? It's like if you don't have time to take a course, then you don't have time to take your career seriously. And they'll say, I still need to learn something. Sometimes people is like, I'm still taking that course, I'll take that other course. I'm still finishing this, then I'll go find movies. When I feel confident, then I'll start working on projects, right? And so, that's fair enough. That's, I'm not gonna say that you don't have to learn or anything like that. But there is a moment where you have to stop just acquiring the skill, like acquiring the how do I compose, right? And to actually start proving to yourself that you can use that to actually write music, to actually work on projects and actually get paid for the music, for the things that it's not that you have to if you don't want to. It's not about the money. Some of you already have like a full-time job and you love that job. You just have the music as a hobby. It's just to me, it's like a validation. It's like, I do this music, I like this music, I'll show it to my wife, to my kids, they love it, because it's family, right? But what about someone else, right? If I actually get to someone to pay for my work, that means that to me, that's what it means to be a composer, right? There's nothing wrong with not getting paid or not seeking for projects. So anyway, so my mission is that so you gain those skills fast, so you can feel confident and maybe, or hopefully, I should say, decide to make a career, right? So the three, I told you this is a very, very rough presentation. I still don't have the name for this, but basically the three things that I found that it's like everyone who achieves, or it's framework, tools, and challenges. All right, and that's exactly what we are gonna do in this class. But I need you to when we do these classes, and I know it's a long presentation, usually it's not gonna be as long, but I just wanted you to know, and especially those who are new, why we're doing the things that we are doing. And we're in the 5 minutes, or hopefully 5 minutes, we're gonna start with the suspense. I gave this a name. I call this the hero formula. It's just because I love movies, I love heroes, and it makes a lot of sense. I'll explain this in a second. It's basically a framework. Those who've done more classes with me, you know what I'm talking about, but I'll explain a little bit of the theory behind it and why it works. Okay. I just put this slide here. It comes from another presentation. It's a little bit of a funny slide. But when I say, to be all in and to do the things that I tell you, it's sort of like this, right? This is not going all in. This is kind of going all in. This is going all in, right? So I'm not saying that you have to buy all this stuff. I'm just saying this like, commit to learn and commit to do things and commit to advance, commit to challenge yourself and achieve, all right? All right, so let me explain the hero formula thing. So I told you there are two ways of learning music, right? There's the traditional, the old way of doing things, right? We said like 4 years of orchestration, 2 years of harmony, 4 years of harmony, 2 years of counterpoint, etc., or which is completely fine. It just has two problems, right? Now, first thing, it's time. As I said, there's like many years, right? And the other thing is that you are learning the theoretical concept, the theory behind the concept behind harmony. You are not learning how to. So like harmony by itself is not music, right? Orchestration by itself is not music. Counterpoint by itself is not music, right? There's a very specific way to use a group of chords, right? And this specific harmony, a specific type of melody or melodic material or motif or not, to recreate or to write in one specific style or recreate one mood or one genre, right? So when you learn all these big things, you still don't know how to combine them, right? So I'm not gonna say it's useless. It's perfectly fine, but it's a little bit of a waste of time. It's kind of like if you want to learn how to drive a car, right? And you start studying like mechanics so you can build the motor, and then aerodynamics so you can build the chassis, so you at the end have a car and you can drive the car. It's not useless, but there are better ways of doing this. And so it's okay if you have time, right? I did it, but I took the traditional way. I went to the conservatory, but I started when I was 6, right? It was 15 years. I finished when I was 21. Right? But remember, I had a teacher who told me, Mark, take advantage of the time that you have now when you're studying, because when you start working professionally, you won't have time anymore. And I'm not even talking about if you have kids. you know what I'm talking about. So for those of us who don't have the kind of time that we had when we were kids, we have to find a better way. And so if you think about, let me just put this here. So if you think about a hero, right? And here's what I explained when I explained the hero thing and why I call this the hero formula. There are two things. What makes a hero? There are two things. There may be a third thing I'll explain at the end, but there are two things, two main things. There's something, a tool or something that gives them the power, right? And then there's the willingness to take a journey, right? So to take a series of steps to get the thing that they want to get. So the first thing is the tool that gives them the power. So for example, for Tony Stark, he's got the Iron Man armor, right? So like Black Widow, her power is like, she fights like no one else, right? So there are different heroes that have different powers, right? And then there's a journey. There is a journey, and the journey is the exact same journey for everyone. It's called the hero journey, and it's not something that I made up. It's a very well known. It's like the typical Hollywood movie structure, which is nothing new really. It's not even metaphorical. We're not talking superheroes. It's like the typical hero journey. It's like a hero is a person, someone who does something extraordinary. That's basically what it is. It doesn't have to be a superhero. So this is not even metaphorical. This is real. And it's like, so the hero journey, hero journey is the internal transformation that a person that achieves something extraordinary, the internal transformation, the personal transformation that the person goes through as it advances from being this person to being that upgraded person once you've achieved that extraordinary thing. It doesn't have to be something truly extraordinary. It's just achieving something in your life, like a new skill or a new mark, right? Becoming something that you or someone that you weren't before, all right? And that's called the hero's journey, and it goes like this. goes like this. Let me just switch the camera here. So it basically goes like this. It's the first time that I explain this. It's a concept that I've used many times. It's a very well-known formula. They use this formula in Hollywood. It's sort of like the Fibonacci series, right? That you find all over nature. This is the same thing. It works. It's a formula. They use it in movies because it resonates with us, with human beings naturally, and it's a formula that works and they make a lot of money. That's why they use it. But it's a typical path that you go through and the internal transformation that you go through whenever you achieve something, right? And it goes like this. I didn't invent this. The first person who described it was Joseph Campbell, just so you know. You can, in fact, for those of you who joined MTCM for the October class, I mentioned this. To go watch the documentary. ¿Cómo se llamaba el document? Hero's Journey. I think it's called Hero's Journey. Something like this. No. The story about Joe. Finding Joe. So you can go watch it's not a great documentary. The production is not great. The content is nice. All right. So it goes like this, right? So basically, this is the journey. Starts here. And it has two sections, right? So this is where you start. You are like regular person, status quo, right? Here's you got a call to adventure for whatever reason. Okay, something happens. There's a call to adventure. You want to do something. Okay, and here's the refusal. And if you don't care about this, like if you're like, why are you explaining this to me, Mark? I thought I came here to learn suspense, right? This is a structure. If you want to learn narrative type of music like a screen scoring type of music, this is important. Music development is structuring music in a specific way, and this is a very natural. It's built on our. This is built on our like the genome. This is how we just learn this. Just stay with me for a second. So call to adventure. Something happens and then you want to move towards something, but you have fears, right? And there's the rejection moment. At some point you meet the guide, right? And the guide is either a person who's been here and here in both worlds, right? Who knows how to transition. So basically this is the real world, and this is the special world, all right? So this is the guide, this is the person or some sort of insight that you gain that gives you the clues to actually move forward, okay? And here's the threshold. Here's when you cross the threshold. Here's when you commit, you decide, I'm gonna do this, okay? The next step, the most important step is here, right? This is the most important step. Now here is the here's the trial and error. This is the fights. Here's where you, in the movies, here's when you start confronting some of the enemies. Here's when you start making allies. Here's when you learn. Here's where you practice, okay? And then the next step is when you approach the thing that you fear most. But before I continue, let me explain, right? The movies, the problem of me explaining this is that when I finish explaining this, you're gonna know exactly what's gonna come in each movie, in each minute. All right, okay, this is the next part. Something like this gotta happen in a second, right? So you'll know exactly what's gonna happen. But real quick, basically every movie, before I continue, so you get a picture. So every movie and every transformational journey that everyone takes, it always goes through the same. It's like you get these things like, for whatever reason, it's like the call to adventure. I want to do this, and then you've got your fears, but then you cross and you start studying, you confront, and then when we get here, this is the confronting the thing that you fear the most. But every movie has two climatic moments, like confronting the thing that you fear the most, which is there's like death and rebirth moment, right? And then there's the climax, right? There's even if you're not analyzing this, your subconscious brain is waiting for those moments, right? And you know that when you're in a movie and you are here, it's like if the movie finishes here, something's wrong, right? It's a bad movie, right? So you subconsciously, because we've been trained to see this pattern over and over again, basically you've got this the call to action, start training, you've got the confronting the biggest fear, and then there's like the big climatic moment in the movie, like the big fight, like the biggest fight, right? So it's like this, it goes like starts call to action, then you cross, you start learning, and it's like this double boom, right? This confronting the biggest fear and climax sort of thing, right? So this is what's left. So so here's the trial and error, the fights, the learning, and all these things. Here's when you are approaching sort of like the thing that you fear the most. There are different names for this. I'm trying to explain it as simple as possible. Here's when you confront your biggest fear. It's like the death and reborn moment. And when you cross this moment, you receive like the gift, they give you the sword, like you receive something here, something you gain something. It's either knowledge or insight or whatever it is, right? And then it's the comeback to the real world. So you prepare to come back. Here's the climatic moment before you return to your normal situation. Here's like the big fight. Here's the climax of the movie. Here's like the thing that's gonna be the hardest. Okay, and that's basically sort of how it goes. Okay, so if you're like I don't know, yeah, makes sense for movies, but for life, let's just give it a try. So for example, if so learning a new skill, okay? Learning a new skill. So you're here, right? And you're like, and you listen to some music, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I love this music. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's trailer music. And you don't know how to write trailer music. I want to write trailer music, but you're like, I don't know if I'll be able, right? But how do I create this big sound? I don't know, what's that sound, right? You start doubting yourself. And then you start you find a teacher, a book, a video, whatever it is that teaches you how to do it. It's like, okay, I'm gonna commit, I'm gonna do this. And then you start learning, right? And you struggle, right? Doesn't sound good and all that. And then at some point, you start here and it doesn't work, but you keep pushing, and at some point you finish a piece of, and here's where you sort of like finish a piece of music, and either it works or it doesn't work. Maybe you finish a trailer music and someone listens to it, it's like, this is crap, right? Or you submit it, maybe you have a contact with a trailer music library, like a trailer music house, and you submit it, it's like, this doesn't work, this is not trailer music, this is Chord. You're like, crap. It's like, oh man, I'm not good at this, right? And you start doubting yourself. And it's like, at some point you truly, you truly learn how to write in the style, and then you sort of like, you sort of like receive this gift, like, okay, I know how to do this. And then maybe like the biggest fight is whatever, like maybe it's like you get hired to write like a trailer music album, and that's the hardest part to do, because it's actually writing a lot of music and whatever it is, right? So that's like a micro cycle. So if it was something like bigger, right, something a little bit more epic, it's like, I want to become a film composer. It's the same story, right? Maybe you hear like John Williams or Hans Zimmer music, and you're like, oh, John Powell's like, oh my gosh, love this, I want to compose music like this, right? It's like, but I don't know if I'll be able, right? And then you find the guide, you find the person who's been there, or the book, or the video, or whatever it is, or the course, right? And then you decide, you commit, like, I'm gonna do this, okay? I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna become a film composer. And here's when you start training and learning and all these things, and you have the struggles and the fights, and here this point here is that the micro cycle that we decided here, right? That we just described is the learning one new style. So this is when you learn one style and then another style, but then you start confronting the thing that you fear the most, which is maybe this is hard, but you feel comfortable here. The thing that you fear the most is actually proving yourself that you can do it, that you can work professionally doing something like this, or the thing that you fear the most, that you don't like networking, you don't like doing cold calls, which is what it takes for you to really be a film composer. It's not the skill, it's the actually proving to yourself that you can do it, right? It's something that proves to you that you can do this. So, but you gather the courage, and then you start doing cold calling, or you start networking, or you start doing whatever you have to do to find the movie, or to find the video game, or to do whatever you want, or library music, or the consistency because library music it's all about consistency, right? Whatever it is, and you do it, right? And once you do it, you get the reward, whatever it is. Maybe it's the movie or the video game. And now you approach the climatic moment, which is this. If this was hard, this is the hardest, right? One thing is getting a movie. The other thing is just doing the movie, right? Because up until here, you did an assignment, maybe, you did a piece of music, you didn't have any pressure, you didn't have any deadline. But here, you've got to write 60 minutes of music in 20 days, and that is the challenge. But after this, you return to the point where you came from, but you're an upgraded version of the person that you were before, and you have the insight that you didn't have before. And at this point, you are either ready to take on bigger projects or ready to share things to the people who's starting the journey. All right, so that's called the hero journey.
Hi, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. How are you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm fine, man. Could you just please go through the cycle again in terms of the superhero movie? Just
Yeah.
to quickly repeat the dots. I just lost the beginning. I think you
Yeah.
start at go, right? I cannot read it. It's very small.
No worries. Yeah, Simon. Yeah, 100%. So yes, and actually, I wanted to explain I was forgetting. Thanks for asking the question. So the steps is status quo here, like normal life, and then and I'll give you an example. I'll give you maybe a couple examples. Status quo, call to adventure. Then here is the rejections, like I don't know if I'm gonna do this or not, because you start doubting yourself. There's you meet the guide. Meeting the guide, right? The person, the insight, whatever it is that gives you like okay, with this I can do this, right? And then there's the crossing the threshold, and this moment is like when you commit. Yes, I'm gonna do this, right? Or the hero commits. And then here's like they call it the trials or the alliances, allies, enemies, fights. This is when you are like, okay, I'm gonna do this. It's when you start your journey, sort of thing, right? And then here's like getting closer to the death and rebirth moment. That's the most important. That is when you confront the thing that you fear the most, right? And then after this is when you get the gift. It's like they give you like the sword or whatever. You gain insight. You gain something here. It's like I don't know if you've seen. Avengers Infinity War, not Endgame, Infinity War, when Thor has...
You did.
All right, so when Thor goes to I don't remember the name of the star, to forge the Stormbreaker, right? And he has to hold the whatever it is, so the star can shoot the light of the beam of light through him, and he literally dies. That is the death and reborn moment in that movie. And then he receives that there's not a sword, is the new hammer, which is not a hammer, is the Stormbreaker, right? So it's that is this moment in that movie, right? And then it's approaching the climatic moment. It's like the big fight. So what Hollywood movies do lately is that they are pushing this more and more to like this, so they have more time for the big fight and the special effects and all that, because that's like the fun part of the movie. And sometimes all these things happen very, very fast, like within the 15 first minutes.
Yes.
And then here's a big part of the movie, but then try to push it so they can have like the big fight and all that. So for examples, like the first 2008 Iron Man, right? The call to adventure is when he sees that his weapons are being used by terrorists. That's like, what is? It's like that's the call to when he meets the guide. Is the guy that helps his life, that installs the thing in his chest. And then when this guy dies, he tells him, don't waste your life. Make your life meaningful, right? And that is the guide for him. And when he commits is when he says to everyone, Stark Industries isn't gonna manufacture weapons anymore, right? And then he commits and he starts building the armor, right? This trial and error, right? He starts flying, and then he burns all the cars, and it goes on and on. Another movie, for example, Hunger Games, right? Katniss Everdeen, the call to who's the hero, the heroine. Her call to adventure is when they call her sister's name, and she's like, no, this is not happening. I'm gonna do it, right? And she volunteers. That's when she decides. She gets afraid, but she meets the guy. We all know who the guy is. And then she transitions from the real world to the special world. She literally takes a train to the city, and then the rest of the movie. So it's the exact same structure, right? So for movies, it's like this. But these for movies, they do it that way because we connect with that structure. And this does not define the structure of the movie. This defines the internal transformation of the hero, which is the exact same transformation that we go through every time that we grow or achieve, or grow, advance, or achieve something, right?
Absolutely.
So that's it. All right. So hopefully, the hero formula that I gave the name to is the two things. Is the tool that gives you the superpower or the power, right? Which we said at the beginning, for Iron Man is the armor, for Black Widow is, the way she fights. And then the commitment to take the journey, to go through this process to achieve or to advance or to grow. All right? So that's sort of what it is.
One more question. And then the climax takes part in the real world, where where the special part is taken back to the real world. Is that correct? So the climax is actually on the left upper corner, right? Not in the death rebirth moment. Is
yes,
that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, that's how it is, right? Like Thor. Thor returns from the other star. I forgot the name of the star to to the Earth, right? And they have the fight. No, not to the Earth. Yes, to the Earth, exactly.
Yes.
And they have the fight there, right?
It's Chris Hemsworth, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's it. Cool. All right. So that's how it goes. And so why? So with MTC, all right. So with MTCM, we sort of use this. So I hopefully this it's a funny way of describing it, but hopefully it makes sense. With MTCM, it's the same thing, right? It's the tools and the journey, tools of the journey. So the tool basically is, it's in every class we learn the tool that gives you the power to write in that style. But I need you to go through the journey to learn it, because as we said, if you want to study music the traditional way, you can just grab the book, right? Read a book. Well, this is not a book, this is a score, but you could read a book and you're like, okay, and then you finish the book and maybe you retain 4% of what you read. If you do the thing, you retain way more. That's not anything that I made up. It's just the way it is. And so the journey, it's what it does. And so basically the journey starts here, right? It starts with your status quo and call to adventure. Usually I send an email, hey, tomorrow we're gonna learn this style. And then you get excited, but you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. But you've got the guide, which is me and the course, right? I'm gonna teach you how to do this. And then it's like, okay, cool, we're gonna do this. And then I actually have you, we advance through this, and I have you actually do the composing this style. And it's not just, and at the end of the class you can compose. It's during the class with pressure, with challenge, right? So you have to go through this, and then this is easy, right? Because 20 minutes you do what you can, but then I give you the, hey, and at the end of the class, like, hey, it'd be nice if you could finish this, like you compose 20 seconds, but if you can do the 2 minutes and develop, that is the hard part, because yeah, I can compose 20 seconds of music, right? Using the tools and all this, using this harmony, this type of harmony, this type of melody, this orchestration, etc. But actually, developing this into 2 minutes piece, that is like the big fight. It's the climatic moment. That's when you're gonna confront things that you didn't confront during like the learning of the style. So that's how we go, and then we repeat this process over and over and over again. That's like, it's a micro cycle, but we repeat it in every class, hopefully. So that's why when sometimes I don't have the time, and I design the class differently, or I end the class, it's like, for whatever reason, it hasn't been as effective, right? I don't have time, and I do the class, and then I go like, guys, I don't have more time, do your, compose. I'm gonna finish the class, I'm gonna go away, you compose after the class, right? It doesn't work the same way, because we don't go through the entire cycle. And then you personally, you guys have to be very, very, you have to actually to commit to do the thing. And if there is not a sort of some sort of pressure, some of you will do it, some of you won't. Depends on the commitment that you put on this thing. And I don't blame you when you don't do it, because it's just sometimes it's hard, or we have other things to do. So anyway, that's what, and yes, ultimately it's you, right? It's your responsibility, right? But, well, we are just trying to do things differently here, and we are just trying to create things that give better result than anything else that I've personally done in the past. So that's what we are trying to create. That's just helping in a different way. All right? Woo! All right, so that's it. That's sort of the intro. Let's do this. So hopefully this is, for those of you who are new here, it makes sense. It makes sense to you that we are doing things the way we're doing them, and you understand the reason. Cool. All right. So this is for later. All right. So let's do this. So suspense. All right. This, no. Learn music, learn a specific type. So when we Maybe something that I didn't mention is when we talk about the tool, right? Give you the tool. The tool is what gives you the power and all that thing. The tool is these four things. Is usually 4 or 5 things. Is the structure, harmony, melody, orchestration, and tempo rhythm, right? And we describe these things and you have it. If you had to do it yourself, the way this works is you learn these things by analyzing, right? You analyze the scores. Like if you want to learn how to write this sort of like post-romantic type of music, then you'll start studying post-romantic type of scores. If you want to learn how to compose classical music, then you analyze Mozart, etc., right? If you want to learn how to compose love cues or sadness or suspense, then you analyze that type of music, and then you realize, okay, so this type of harmonies, I've done it for you. That is called modeling. Model what works, copy what works. We are not copying music. We are copying the system. We are copying the framework, right? That's what's here. Study scores, blah blah blah. Model what works. Source of power, right? Etc. Cool. So let's do this. So usually for the recommended tracks for this style, the minimum that you would need here is piano and strings. Okay. So let's talk real quick. Tempo and rhythm. It's gonna be slow. So basically, it's gonna be slow. The only difference is that if you've been in the love and sadness class, usually this for me is the 3rd class. So love and sadness melodically, it's gonna be melodic. We're gonna have like. Right, so we don't have big jumps. It's very melodic, so passing tones and stuff like this. Sadness is the same thing, just minor, right? Suspense is gonna be more motivic, right? Suspense, the melody, it's gonna be more motivic. It's gonna be a little bit more repetition of that motif sometimes, and it's gonna be the tempo and rhythm is gonna be slow. So that's like the very very simplified view of this style. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit. Where am I here? So yeah, so there's gonna be slow. Subdivisions are gonna be we're gonna be using half notes and quarter and eighth notes. So it's gonna be we won't have very very fast subdivisions. Tempo is gonna be 65 to 100, 110. And sometimes we can have like some like subtle low hits to enhance a little bit or to add this dramatic effect. Now harmony. Harmony is the important part here. So real quick, if love was basically major chords, we've got. So I'm not gonna explain a harmony here, but basically we've got major and minor chords, right? Major chord. Then we've got minor chords. It's the same thing as a minor chord with a minor third. And then we've got diminished chords, right? We've got augmented chords, and then we've got this. We have extension, 7th and 9th, and all these things. But let's just stay with the major, minor, and maybe diminished. And then let's call just for now. Let's say that we can add extensions or dissonances. We can add extra notes that add dissonance. So if love is major chords, or love or positive emotions, then sadness is minor chords. Suspense is like sadness, so minor chords with a twist. So minor chords with something else that adds a little bit of dissonance. All right, so that's basically harmonically what suspense is gonna be. So plays a central role. Usually minor chords moves slowly, slower than love. So if love, we will have more changes. So we've got changes with suspense. We will have changes, right? We will change from one chord to the other, but it's going to be generally it's going to be slower, right? This kind of thing, right? So there are changes that are slow, but not that big, right? So sometimes we go from one chord to the other, but it's a chord that shares notes. So there's changes, but not as many changes as with Sadness. And when we transition to the next style, which is going to be action mid intensity, it's gonna be harmonically, it's gonna be very similar. We're gonna have a motor, and the changes are gonna be even slower. Okay, so we're transitioning from Sadness, minor chords, to Suspense, minor chords with a twist, slower harmonic changes, to action mid intensity, minor chords with a twist again, but even slower, and now we add a motor that creates a tension. Okay, but we will get there the next day. All right, so that's that. What does it mean? Triads with notes, like with a twist. What does it mean that a twist? With added notes, stuff like this, dissonances, and small clusters, not too big of a cluster or too dense of a cluster, because then what happens is that we're transitioning into sort of like horror type of a style. Okay, so that's for tempo, rhythm, and then harmony. Melody, it's gonna be more motivic than melodic. Okay, can be either short or fragmented, sometimes non-existent. If not present, the dissonant harmonic texture will drive the music. So if not present, if non-existent, the dissonant harmonic texture will drive the music. Long sustained notes are frequent. Like if we have this tone, then we can have like a violin's note on top, right? Adding a little like long swells, violin, long note going up and down in dynamic a little bit. Mostly utilizes this dissonant intervals. This is a tritone here. Right. This kind of thing. Mostly uses foreign and non-traditional modes, and chromatism is frequent. So yes, there would be more scholastic ways to explain this, or we could talk about specific scales. I don't like it because it just puts your like, when you are thinking about this style, it's like it puts yourself in a box. I prefer experimenting a bit, you know, and using more generic terms to describe it, rather than use this scale, this harmony, this chord, right? I prefer it's minor chords with a twist. I'll add some chromatism, some weird dissonant notes in there, and try to find the tone and move from there. Orchestration.
Sorry, Mark.
Yes.
Could I interrupt you shortly?
No,
could you also just? It would be nice to know if you could just mention some of the cliches. That would be great.
Right here. Yes, I will. Some orchestration cliches here, some texture cliches here. So orchestration, and then we're gonna compose not one but three short pieces today. The number 2 and 3 are gonna be super cliche. And you'll have a chance to actually try it. So orchestration emphasizes dark tones and textures. Pedal notes played by double basses and low woodwinds are frequent. Ostinatos can be played either by. I will do all these things in a sec, but just reading these real quick. Ostinatos can be played either by the string section, the harp, or electronic synth pulses. Soft ostinatos, not very intense ostinatos. We are not gonna have the typical. Let me see if I have the. Let me just open my template a little bit more. Come on. Not working? All right, there you go. So we are not gonna have the. So not this type of. So this would be. We are not going to have the. see. Hide this. So loose. Something like this. Anyway, it didn't come out really well. But this is more typical for the action mid intensity. So if we have ostinatos, yes, we can have an ostinato. Dun, 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 dun. Stuff like this, very subtle. Maybe like a low pulsing thing, like something like this, right? But very subtle. Ostinatos are often supported with light percussion. Low tone percussion can be added to the ostinato to be used for dramatic hits, and long sustained notes are typically played by the high strings with the support of woodwinds. All right, so that's sort of like ideas, more like ideas for orchestration. Clichés. So when it is soft, we're gonna have the piano. It's gonna be motivic and repetitive melody with soft sustained strings, and we can add a little bit of arp to add movement, like internal movement. Okay, if it's soft, like the typical suspense soft type of movie. If it's a little bit bigger, then the melody, the motif can go into the high strings. Maybe add woodwinds for color a little bit. Then the mid strings, maybe the violas, longer strings to add support, and then for the lower strings, when you need more weight and for more like a serious mood, you can bring them in. Piano and arp to add movement, and then high strings or like high strings or like intervals with the strings for more tension. We'll work on that in a second. And now if it's pulsing sort of thing, you can have the above, but then having what I just did, a little bit of pulsing like low strings or low pulsing synth or something like this, or subtle staccato woods like bassoon, something like this. Anyway, let's work in one of the styles. Just some tips and tricks here. You can use non-conventional minor scales for the melody, twist triadic minor chords with dissonances for the harmony, and then suspense is more motivic and less melodic than sadness. So if you just remember this, then you can compose in this style. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna compose a little bit. Then I'm gonna give you some time, to do the same thing that I've done. Then I'll compose two more short cues. I'm gonna show you a few cliches. And then we're gonna move and then I'm gonna give you some time, and then we're gonna close the class after this. Okay, so let's do this. So yeah, so basically what I'm gonna do is, let me see the tempo. Yeah, that works. All right, just record this. Cool. So this is what we've got basically. So we've got this repetitive motif, with the C in the bass, and then yeah, I'm gonna do this instead. It's a little bit darker. This is the first part. The second time that I repeat this is like, so we've got this dissonance here. And then this dissonant interval. I increase a little bit the low. I'm gonna add the lower strings here. I'm gonna orchestrate this in a second. And then sort of like the fifth of the central key that we are in. So it's like the C. We are in C. Right. This is like a C minor, right? C minor with the F sharp, which is the tritone, adds that that twist thing, and then we move the scale, right? And this sort of we end with the fifth. Cool. So that's what I've done, right? Motivic, not very melodic, repetitive, dissonances, a little bit of minor chords with a twist, and that's basically what we've done. Okay, so we're gonna orchestrate, we're gonna go with this, sort of like this cliche here, which is gonna be soft, right? Piano, motivic, repetitive, then soft sustained strings to add a little bit of support. I'm gonna enhance it with some low strings to add a little bit more weight and seriousness to the mood, and then maybe a little bit of arp for movement. But I won't spend that much time, and then I'm gonna give you time to do the same thing. So, sustained strings at some point here. This piano, it's a tad too loud. Let me just bring it down a little bit. Come on. One more time. No. Right, there you go. This is the pedal, and this is the velocity. Damn! Okay, so this is the controller is messed up. 1 second. Two things. First, I need you to see this guy. Cool. All right, and then that's the first thing. And the second thing, this doesn't work properly. What did I just record? I recorded main volume. Really? 1 second. Select this one, and this is gonna assign 11, and it's gonna be channel. Come on, channel 1. All right. So I have to delete this, and then I'm gonna record this again. Perfect. Okay. And now I'm gonna show you controllers. All right, this is expression now. Perfect. Okay, sorry, you're not seeing this. Expression, not volume. Okay, and I want it a little bit louder, just a tiny bit louder, tad. That's exactly what I need. And then I'm gonna bring this up a little bit so you can hear it better. And I'm gonna record a little bit of strings. Move this up here. So strings now, gonna be something like. Now we're talking very, very soft. No. Now maybe a little bit. Right, let's do this. I need the piano a little bit louder. No. The strings are going to be very, very soft, and then I'm going to go here. Let's see. A little bit of tension here. So I added the pedal here. So this note, basically what we are seeing here is we have this note and this note that go together towards the end, right? So now it's a big, right? We've got this. Sorry, we've got this. Basically, we've got this. So we've got this. Now there's more than an octave. Usually when we learn like the strings writing, it's like you try to not have more than an octave between different instruments. So for example, you would have something like this. Like violins 1, 2, viola, cello, and basses, right? And here we've got this instead, right? We've got 2 octaves, which in this style is completely fine because it works well with this style, right? And we'll see a cliche that, well, the third cliche that we'll see is the typical, right, like the typical dissonance up here, and then one note down here. right? So these type of things work with this type. So that's what we've got. It's not great. We could I could make it sound a little bit more realistic, but it's a starting point. I'm gonna add a long note at some point here, like maybe a long violin, something like this. Violin, 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 long note. It's gonna do. So just like very, very soft swells going up and down. So you can see, let me just make this smaller. So you can see, basically I'm adding tension towards the end. So very, very soft, high. Notice this note here. This one. Which is a dissonance with the bass, right? The bass is doing a natural B. This is a B flat, so there's a dissonance. They're far, far apart, but it's still a dissonance, right? And so it starts like this when the so the dissonance is right here, presenting this. I would like to work on this so it starts a little bit softer for from niente type of thing. But this is sort of like what we've got. Maybe I could add a little bit of arp here, maybe. So basically the arp, it's not perfectly, but the arp, what the arp does, it's sort of like, let me see if I have the slide here. There are several ways to develop, right? And this one is melodic variation, and there's one thing that's called diminution or augmentation, which is just grabbing one of the motifs or melodies, whatever you have, and then either playing it faster or longer, right? So we have in the piano, so this is the arp, this is the piano. I'm gonna select both of them. I'm gonna click, so the piano is doing, one second, it's saving. So the piano is doing C, B, A flat, and G. And the arp is doing this twice. It's right here, it's here. This is the arp. One and then twice. So the diminution sort of thing. So I'm presenting the same thing, and at some point it's creating dissonance, right? So that's it. That's what the arp is doing. It's just adding a little bit of color, texture, and movement to the thing, and that's it. So sounds like this. So like aligning them. One second. Yeah, all right. Just a little bit of rhythmic variation. Tom, ti-dum, tom, tom, tim, tom, tom, sort of thing. Okay. So that's that. So it's a very, very, very simple style, especially in terms of orchestration. We could enhance this. In fact, I did enhance it with the lower strings, which don't come through very well here because I'm using the same patch. So I'm gonna use a different patch just to enhance the string. So I'm just gonna record this a little bit, and I'm gonna open this, and these are the higher strings, and I'm gonna select the lower strings. So when we have the lower strings coming in, I can push them a little bit. So it's gonna be an A. This is just the same patch for, in my template, the way I have it set up is the same patch. I have it for the high strings and the longest, and the high strings and lower strings. The high strings have reverb, the lower strings have no reverb, and you can go higher because I cut some of the some of the notes. It's an ensemble patch, but I'm just using the cellos and double basses, and I'm having no reverb this one just to gain a little bit of clarity in that low end. Right, type of thing. So that's what I'm gonna do. It sounds very, very powerful. Also, it's a little bit louder in the mix, so I can enhance in a little bit of an artificial way how low I would want this to sound. So I have more power. I have more. I have the capacity with this patch to enhance the low frequencies. Again, it's a little bit artificial, but I have the capacity to do that if I want something that's a little bit more cinematic or more epic, or I just want that effect. Okay. So towards the end, I wanted to enhance the low frequencies, and I'm gonna bring in this patch. Let me just close this so you can see a little bit more of the context. So I have the high strings. This is the ensemble patch, and when the lower strings come in, I'm gonna layer on top of that the lower strings patch. This is the other one. I'm gonna go here, select the low strings. All right, that's what I recorded. Sort of thing. Okay, cool. So that is it.
Mark,
yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question. Maybe it's twofold. The first one is, you mentioned the more exotic minor modes. What exactly are you theoretically? It's harmonic minor, or what are you using?
So this is what I like to recommend.
And the second question, but it's related. Could you describe the so-called chord progression, or could you say it, express it, or is it just intuitively what is there a chord progression?
Okay, so two questions. So the first question, I usually go here, and I just I try on a scale that I like, and then I use it. Takes a little bit of time. So yeah, there are scales that will work for this style because they enhance the dissonances, right? Like the Lydian mode is not gonna work, right? Because this works great it could work, but it works great for magic, right? This one here. For magic, but depending on how you use the scale, then you could make it work a little bit. So sometimes you're like, I'm gonna try a few of these scales. Ionian mode or major scale. Incense scale here. Incense scale. Doesn't quite make it, but I could. In scale, okay. Hungarian minor scale, interesting. It's got this, I like this interval here. It sounds a living, I don't want to enhance that, right? But if I use it properly, nice.
But are you're looking for the ones with the very close dissonance, like a like
minor seconds and tritons.
minor seconds, yeah.
Yeah, minor seconds and tritons. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah. And
harmonically, is it? Are you thinking then in this scale, diatonically in this scale for the harmony?
So when I'm action, high intensity and magic is the type of style that I almost even don't care about the key that I'm in, but and so I'm going from one chord to another, from one key to another. I'm not even thinking about the keys. In this style, I don't see as much as the harmonic progression. I see I'm in this key, and this is my the center it's C, right? And then yes, the chord is staying here, but let me see how to explain this. So for example, C minor, right? This is clearly in C. I did chord cluster. Well, this could be like a diminished chord, or a minor chord with an added sharp fourth.
Okay, obviously you're not thinking in terms of harmony here, but then I express it I asked the question other way around. Where are you coming from? Which point are you deciding the bass notes? Just out of the scale, or I understand the top line or the melody or the motif out of the scale, but then how you come to the bass notes?
From the notes in the key that I'm in, and enhancing the dissonances if possible.
Oh, sure. Okay. Then same methodic like for the motif, but
yes,
just in the bass, and to create some kind of line or movement.
Yes. In this particular example, I'm gonna show you a very cliche way of moving the harmony for this style next.
Cool.
But first, should I explain it now? I'll explain it now, and then I'll give you some times. But basically, in this style, if you move the chords in minor or major thirds, right? And like if you go from C minor, I don't know why I don't see the keyboard that much today. So C minor to E flat, A flat minor. Right, like the typical sort of like or with the strings, a typical thing, and so if I do, I'm gonna select these three.
And this pattern of the moving major thirds and staying on the minor gender of the chord, is this? Could you move it further, like to, I guess, E minor, and then again you keep the minor quality of the chord, and then you are moving it up or down thirds, major thirds.
Yes, and yes, absolutely. And you could also go like you could go tritone as well. Like if you've got like what I'm trying to do here is to keep as many common notes as possible. So yeah. and then you could also maybe have diminished. So for example, this one you could have keep this note here, okay, which is the common note between C minor and F sharp diminished. And then with the strings works very, very well. Like for example, the effect, the thing that we had earlier. J. Alright, and then for example we have here dom, do, re, do, re, do, re, do, re, no, here. And then I would need the cellos in, but you sort of get the tori. That's another very, very common cliche. Moving the usually minor chords up or down a minor, major, third, but you can also do tritons and some of these major. So those minor chords you could use the diminished chords as well, or you can have a minor chord with some dissonance and stuff like this. It's very, very typical, very, very cliche. That's one thing. I think I'm gonna give you 15 minutes to come up with sort of like, if you don't want to do it directly as I did it, maybe you can come up with the cliche, right? So basically what I have done is, so what I have done here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got do do da don. So I've got the do da do di dom, right? Do da do di dom, and then for the low, this is right, and this guy. So here I had first this C, and then the B, and then the A flat, and then the G. That's how I moved the bass. So I started here, and then the second time I repeat it, and then the third time I repeat it, etc., etc. And I'm enhancing this tritone here, this major second, sorry. This is like the so 1, 2, 3 semitones apart, right? And just trying to enhance at the end, and trying to enhance the dissonances, the notes that are not part of that minor chord, and that's it. And then I added a few like long note violins and strings like this, like very, very soft swells on top of this, and then I added a little bit of dissonant towards the end, right? And that's basically what I did. So you can sort of like come up with the idea, and here, write it with the piano, and then maybe leave the piano, add a little bit of strings, add the arp to add a little bit of movement, and then I'll give you 10 minutes to do something like this, and then I'll go back with you. I'll show you a couple more cliche things, and then we'll move from there. Okay? Cool. All right. So your turn. I'm gonna put the timer here. Timer 15 minutes. No, not 15 minutes. 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Mark, just one short question to get it right. You said that you used to enhance the dissonance. You used bass notes which are not in the scale, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Okay.
So in this case, do, di, da, do. In this case, all the notes are part of the minor scale sort of thing. Yes, they are. Mm-hmm. But you could, if you want, but I don't know. In this case, I didn't. But you can, if you want to darken this, then yes, you can use dissonances. You can use notes that are not in the scale, in the bass line, and that's gonna darken the tone a little bit. For sure.
All right.
All right. So I'm gonna give you 12 minutes. 12 minutes, and then I'll be back. All right. Your turn. Go. All right, cool. So we are back. Hopefully it went good. I just wanted to show you 2 more cliches. It's gonna be. It's gonna take a little bit for this to open. So, all right. So I'll keep moving, and then I'll go back to the. I'll go back to the style when QH is working. All right. So we've seen all these. Now I just So real quick, the different. Now those who joined today, we've seen here. We'll see Love and Sadness a few days later on. We saw these the last 2 weeks. We saw these 2 styles. I explained it real quick. I didn't cover the orchestration, but you know, like harmonically, melodically, when they are and how suspense is different. Action with intensity, I mentioned it's sort of like the same thing, right? Just wanted to give you like a brief overview of what we're gonna be seeing the next days, and so you get sort of like an idea. So that's suspense and action mid intensity is sort of the same thing. It's just action mid intensity, slower harmonic movement, and a more intense motor. All right. So if suspense has a little bit of repetition and sometimes a little bit of like soft, like subtle ostinatos, the ostinatos are gonna be more. It's gonna be there in action mid intensity. Action high intensity is just just breaking everything apart. It's just craziness. It's just if action mid intensity, it's, you know, harmonically it's a little bit more dense with dissonance and all that. Action high intensity is gonna be way more dissonant. In terms of tempo, we're gonna have tempo changes. We're gonna have meter changes. We're gonna modulate from one key to another. We're gonna have chords that are not related from different keys. Gonna be a lot of changes, a lot of syncopation, a lot of instability. And in terms of orchestration, same thing, right? We're gonna go from one section to the other. We're gonna have contrast. We're gonna have a lot going on. This is one of the hardest styles. It's not hard when you understand it. It just takes time to write because there's a lot of information. There are a lot of notes to input. All right, and then from that we will transition to find fantasy and magic. To me, if you understand love, sadness, and fantasy, sort of from that we can go to any other style. Fantasy is different to everything else. So fantasy magic is different than everything else. And then we have supernatural grandeur. And supernatural grandeur is very similar to magic, which is just the orchestration is very, very, very different. I'll explain this when we get there. How are we doing? Okay, we're still loading. All right. So real quick recap. Okay. So we've seen suspense. I'm gonna finish suspense in a second. We'll see 2 more cliches. And then, but just a quick recap of what we saw the last couple of weeks. Those who join now, we will see Love and Sadness later. Not in this class, in another class. But just a quick recap where this style stands and how different it is from the styles that we've seen and the styles that we will see. All right. So we've talked about love and sadness. So love is major chords, major keys, and major chords. Sadness is gonna be minor. Suspense the same thing as minor. As sadness, but we're gonna be those minor chords with a twist, a dissonance, something like this, and then it's not gonna be as melodic. It's gonna be more motivic. When we transition to action mid intensity, it's gonna be even less. It's even less melodic. It's gonna be more motivic. So it's going to be even less thematic, it's going to be more motivic, or sometimes we even won't have a melody at all or a motive at all. And we will include the type of harmonies are going to be similar, those minor harmonies with a twist, and then we're going to include a motor, right? We may have that subtle motor ostinato here, it's going to be more intense here. And when we go to action high intensity, it's action high intensity is it's gonna be craziness, right? It's gonna have it's contrast. So we may have short melodies, short motifs, but it's gonna be very fragmented. We're gonna go from one section to the other. The orchestration is gonna be very fragmented. It's gonna be a lot of contrast. It's gonna be lots of syncopation. It's gonna be tempo changes. It's gonna be time signature changes. We're gonna go harmonically. It's gonna be very, very unstable, etc. This is one of the hardest styles. It's not hard when you understand. It's just there's a lot going on and very, very fast. So you have to put a lot of notes in there. So it just takes time. Okay. And then fantasy and magic is something very different than everything else that we've seen. When we get there, we'll talk about that one. Let me just see if this is working. Yes, cool. I know I don't have them all connected. All right, so that's that, okay? Magic Fantasy is very different, and then we will see Supernatural Grandeur, which is very similar to Magic Fantasy in terms of harmonies, and the orchestration is completely different. That one is way more homophonic, and this one is going to be more contrasting and fragmented. All right, cool. So let's finish this. I just wanted to share with you 2 more cliches, okay? So we have seen this part here, the tororaro, this part here. So I'm just gonna load the track here. It's gonna be an audio track, no, instrument track. It's gonna be contact. Let's see if this works. It's gonna go straight to the master bass, and hopefully this is gonna work. This is, yeah. All right, cool. So I'm just gonna load. Just gonna go with Albion. This will do. Albion, individual patches, strings. Now, individual patches, strings long. There you go. Boom. All right. So just another cliche. Which is so like the lurking around type. Where's here? Here. There. It goes like this, right? You have a very, very high note. It's a very slow moving melody. Starts with one high note, usually violins, and then you have like the violin second, or maybe it's the BC violins 1, and then you have another section of violins playing a very similar melody that is in sort of like dissonant intervals with the melody. So something like this. Let me just. So we've done this. I'm gonna duplicate this track here. Right. So I'm gonna record a little bit. I'm gonna extend this region. Select both of them. Double click. So the first one does this, right? And then the second one, which is this, I'm gonna record. Let's see. So let's see. So the first note, well, it came in here. It's dissonant, right? It's this this ninth here, or this the seventh. Here it's like it's a minor third, so no problem. When we've got a minor second, and then here's a tritone, right? Could have done something different, right? Maybe. Oh, I don't have this note. It's too high. Okay, so maybe so if sorry, it's an ensemble patch that doesn't have those low high notes. I'm gonna move this down an octave just for. It's not perfect, but not in. All right, I prefer it higher, but anyway. And then I'm gonna select the conductor too. This is too high, so I'm going to bring it down. That's why we're doing here. All right, so we've got the second here, tritone, the tritone again. So it's just, it's just having a melody that sounds suspense sort of thing, and then having a second line a little bit lower in volume that doesn't conflict with the first one, except that you are enhancing the dissonant intervals, all right, as much or a little bit, as much as you want if you want it to sound darker, or as little as you want if you just add a little bit of tension and suspense feel to it. Okay, so that's another cliche. And finally, the super typical. I think I shared this with you before, but it's having the two high notes here, like something like this. Oh man, I recommend using a better patch. Okay, like I recommend using the violins 1 and violins 2 instead of using an ensemble patch. It just template crashed, and I can show everything. I need to go to my server computer to do something so I can reconnect, and I'll do it in a second. But so you record like 1 or 2 notes dissonant, right? This is a minor second, or the typical cliche is the minor second, and then having the I'll move this up here, and then having another note low here, the lower octave, right there. So something like this. Let me just record this so you can see exactly what's going on. You can see both of them. No, I'm gonna get rid of this, don't show. Oops, select the second one. Something weird happens around here. I think it's the sample loops, and it doesn't connect very well. I don't know what happened. But anyway, I would record this with a double bass, not with an ensemble strings patch. I would do this with a double basses patch, and I would do this with violins 1 patch, and this with violins 2 patch. So I have control over the exact swell of each note. And then I get a little bit more separation. You see this separation, both register and also position, left, right, violins 1, 2, and double bass register, right? This very open type of sound works well in this style. All right. So cliche. So we've seen the first example. Then we've seen the do type of cliche. Then we've seen the high notes, with dissonant interval sort of thing, and then this one. Okay, these all work very well. So those are tools for you to use in this style. Okay, there are many other things that you can do, but that's when you come in and you add your own thing, your own spin, your own voice, and then you create the thing that makes you unique. All right, cool. Any question before we move on? I've got some other things for today.
Yep. Short question. How do we get to? Can you say some tips for creating structure? If it's clearly not harmonic movement, but we have to create some. Is it motivic development? How do you come to a longer piece than 8 bars?
Cool. All right. So I'm gonna answer this question. All right. So here's how you do this. So first of all, understanding the tools, okay, the tools that you have, and the tools are gonna be the variation for one, and then but also understanding what you can do harmonically and in terms of orchestration and what effects that's gonna have emotionally. That's understanding the tools that you have. So development, like variation. And then the variation that variation can be melodic, harmonic, or other type that I'll explain in a second. And then understanding also how to use the harmony and orchestration and what effect it's gonna have. So that's the first thing. Okay, so that's the first thing. Cool. So Let me just load the piano here real quick to explain a few things. I'm gonna duplicate this track. And I'm gonna name this piano. And I'm gonna open it, and I'm gonna select just the first piano that I see here. Where are you? This one, okay. Just I think this will do it. All right, cool. Cool. All right. So very basic within one style. Oh, so first of all, how to develop that? First, why do we need to develop? Is it library music type of suspense style that we are writing? It's more like suspense / trailer that has a very specific structure, or is it something that you are following the scene, right? So if you are, depending on what it is, it'll have a more like a stronger structure or a more loose structure. So if you are scoring the screen, if you are doing so if you have a scene, then the music is going to follow the scene. That's going to dictate the exact structure. Still, you need to know how to develop this, so you have the tools to say the same thing in a different way. All right. So that's the first thing. And finally, if it's music for video games, it's going to be interactive. You're going to separate this in different layers, and then the engine is going to do the development for you. But still, you need to understand the tools that you have to put them there so that the engine can do its own thing based on what you previously designed. Okay, so a little bit of very basic understanding of harmony and orchestration. So just within suspense, that we know how to create suspense. We know that if we use major chords, we're gonna enhance the positive emotions. If we use the negative chord, the minor chords, we're gonna enhance the negative emotions, right? If we add dissonances, right? If we extend those notes with the major chords, if we add the seventh and the major seventh and all the ninth, etc., we're gonna add color and emotion to that positive emotion. And the minor chords, if we add extensions and dissonances, we're going to create more tension, right? We're going to darken the sound a little bit. Now, that's in terms of the chord, right? If within that suspense type of sound style, we introduce a little bit of like the way we move the chords. We move a little bit away from the way we would move the chords in a suspense type of style, and we move them in a more traditional tonal diatonic type of chord progression. Then we're gonna again gain a little bit of those positive emotions, right? If those are major chords, if those are minor chords, they're gonna be sadness, but not as much suspense, right? So those things, so depending on the scene, right? Maybe it's suspense, but there's a sad moment. You know what to do, right? You know how to change or morph harmonically to get closer to sadness. All right. So and then if we move the chords in non-traditional way, like moving them in thirds, like or parallel movement and all that, then we're gonna stay more in the suspense. Ominous darker if it's minor chords, depending on how we orchestrate this, and we'll talk about orchestration in a second. And then it's gonna sound more like magic, fantasy, supernatural. And it's very common to go from suspense to fantasy sometimes, right? It's just the way we move the chords, right? Okay, now if we move them faster, we're going to enhance the emotion. If we move them slower, we're going to create that stillness that sometimes is so effective, right? We have a dialogue and we just need some sort of like drowny type of music that gives support to the scene but doesn't add too much emotion. So those are things that you can do, right? And harmonically to develop depending on what the demands from the scene, all right? Or if you're not writing for a movie or for a scene and you're just doing like library music that you have a very specific structure, still though these are things that you can do depending on the outcome. So that's in terms of harmony. In terms of orchestration, before I talk exactly what things to do, very basic concepts on orchestration that I would like you to to know, most of you may know this, but just real quick, orchestration, because for some of you it's a new thing. But orchestration of 3 big sections: strings, brass, woods. In terms of loudness, strings sit in the middle. Strings can sound very, very soft, very, very loud. Woodwinds won't sound as loud as the strings. So when we have strings and woodwinds, the woodwinds will color the strings, but they won't sound louder than the strings. So the sound will sort of like blend in the strings. And the brass is the loudest section, so it's always going to sound louder, especially in the fortissimo. So if we have fortissimo, like if we had every instrument in the orchestra performing the best note in the best range, fortissimo, we would hear brass, then strings, and then a little bit of woodwinds coloring the sound a little bit, but lower in the mix. Okay. Now, if you want if you want the woodwind to stand out, then you will have to orchestrate the rest. Like you will have to orchestrate the background material in a way that allows the woodwind to stand out, right? So if you want a flute to stand out, you're gonna have the flute in the upper register, because where the flute actually cuts through the mix better, and then you're gonna have a quieter, not as active, maybe strings pad in the mid low range, because you don't want to conflict with the melody, etc. Right? So then, in terms of sound, in terms of voicing, that is something that's also we've seen in general we're gonna have more open voicings here in the lower register and more closed voicings in the upper register. But if we break that rule, then we sound more like one style or more like another style. So that more open voicing here and closer voicing here works great for for love or sadness or adventure, hero, all these things, right? But if we need to sound a little bit darker, right, having a big space in the middle, right, like what we've done, suspense, very typical. Having closed voicings here with the brass, darker tone, more ominous, right? So that works good for action mid intensity, action high intensity, this type of style. So if we need to go from suspense to action mid intensity, okay, I should be able. I just want to exemplify all this. 1 second. Remote. Let's see if I can connect now. Yes. Fantastic. All right. File disconnect all. Yes. Yes, that's what I want. Cool. And now I should be able to open this guy here and then retry all. Yes, fantastic. All right, getting my template back. All right, so that's that. So now just a word of caution with woodwinds. There are, in terms of sound, so in terms of loudness, we describe strings, woodwinds, softer, and brass, louder, right? In terms of sound, like how homogeneous and how heterogeneous, the strings again is in the middle, right? The woodwinds are the most heterogeneous in terms of voice, in terms of sound, because each instrument within the woodwind section sounds very, very different. The flute sounds very different than the oboe, right? And the clarinet sounds very different than the oboe or the English horn or the bassoon, right? And so with the strings, they all sound sort of the same, right? So it's brass that sits in the middle in terms of, it's and then the strings are the most homogeneous, and the woodwinds are the more heterogeneous type of sound. So that when you are voicing, especially the woodwinds, depending on how you voice the woodwinds, they're gonna have one sound or another, right? You can have a more homogeneous sound within the woodwind section and more heterogeneous sound, and sometimes that is what you want, right? So if you want more color for whatever reason, then there's a specific way of voicing the woodwinds. Let me see, it's all connected, great. Okay, let me just open the template. Fantastic. All right. So for example, we've got, so basically the way this works is so for example, with the woodwinds, you can overlap, you can concatenate, or you can have them like this, right? So for example, if you have flute, like one flute here, and then you have flute, and then you had oboe, this is gonna be a more homogeneous sound than if you've had flute, oboe, right? Like if you have the, like for example, E, C, G, E, right? Something like this. Or if you have them like this or them like this, more homogeneous, a little more heterogeneous, right? So if you do flute, oboe, clarinet, it's gonna be more homogeneous than if you do flute, like flute, oboe, like, and then clarinet, and here, right? If you concatenate, then it's gonna sound more homogeneous. That doesn't make that big of a difference with the strings. That doesn't make that big of a difference with brass. It does, but not as much, right? With woodwind, it does. So if you want more color for like a more magic effect, then more heterogeneous, right? And then also with woodwinds, you may want to sound more like flutes or clarinets. Or you may want to sound more like oboes, right? Like too long, super soft. Anyway, let me just bring this up a little bit. Sorry. Right, you may want to sound more like flutes and clarinets, or more like double reeds, like the oboes and English horns and bassoons, right? So depending on how orchestrate that family, you're gonna have a color or another, and those are important things to keep in mind when you're gonna develop. Okay, so that's that. So orchestration real quick, harmony real quick. Most of these things that we already know, but comes handy because sometimes we are trying to develop and we're trying to do things to make things too complex. The first time that I felt like comfortable developing something, so composition is 5 years, and I was in fifth year. We were the project, the year project was writing a 60 minutes cantata. Right, and so I was studying this course, and I was listening something from the BC, and so basically, there was this melody that did something like it did something like this. It did. It was with the strings, right? And I'm gonna select like an ensemble of strings, and it did something like it was something like. Silence, slower, silence, and then and I was like, wait a minute, hold the phone. I just played it back and I counted. It was like 30 seconds of music. And literally, it was like, I don't know, like 20 notes. It's just the strings, like violins, tire-do-don, violas and cellos, tire-do-don, and then cellos and double basses, tire-dom, boom. And it's like, just repeating the same thing, right? It's like, and it's like sometimes we make things too complex, right? And to me, that was an epiphany, right? And especially when you're studying music and composition, we live in this non-real world where we have assignments and we try to put everything that we know into a 2 minutes assignment, right, or an exercise or a piece of music, and it's not the way it works. The music has a very specific goal with the scene, or maybe it's library music, so it's not a show-off thing. It's not just so you show off how good you are, which happened to me for many years, like me trying to demonstrate how good I was, and you know how many things I could fit in 2 bars. Right, and so the development actually is about establishing limitations. Tire-do-don, tire-do-don, tire-do-don. So it's like these 5 notes, tire-do-don, these 4 notes, right? And then it's a very specific movement. It's got very specific intervals, and how can you use these 4 notes or these 2 intervals or whatever it is to develop it into a larger thing. So the first thing is actually establishing limitations, right? Because we could write everything. You can do whatever you want with music, right? You can do so many things, but the problem is like the problem with if you do one thing and then transition to another and then do something completely different and then another thing is like that you lose the audience, and you don't want to lose the audience. You want to install something in their subconscious brain and then use that thing that you presented initially to develop the entire orchestra, to develop the entire piece. And that is establishing limitations for you as a composer and then playing around with those limitations, okay? So it doesn't have to be a masterpiece every 2 hours. It doesn't need to be a long theme. It doesn't need to be thematic or even motivic. And silence is an important part as as well as a piece. So variation. What can we do to add variation and to develop this? First thing is the most important part is if it's library music, structure. You want to have a structure. So just just establish what it is going to be. What it is going to be. So maybe it's a trailer track, so it's going to have an intro. Then it's going to have like the A section or like the theme sort of thing, right? And then A, again, bigger, right? And then it's going to have sort of like the bridge. And this is gonna be smaller, right? And then it's gonna have A again, super big, and then outro, all right? So I'm gonna have 8 bars here, 16 bars here, and then another 16 bars. You're gonna have 8 bars, 16 bars, or maybe 16 plus 8, something like this. Maybe you can repeat this, and then like repeat. And this is 16 clearly is 8 by 8, right? So repeating the thing twice, 8 plus 8, then 8, then maybe 16 plus 8, and then the outro maybe it's 4 bars. All right, that's it, right? So establish the structure first. That's gonna be very, very helpful. And then we've got 3 types of variation. We've got melodic variation, we've got orchestration variation, and then we have other types of variation, harmonic variation, etc., etc. I'll describe this in a second. So, in terms of melody, let me just slow the piano here, piano. All right, cool. So melodic variation. So we've got repetition. Repetitions, basically, we've got this thing. It's got a ton of reverb, and this one. Can we have less reverb? Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll grab this. Yes. All right. So first type of variation is just repetition, right? No, in fact, let me use this. Yeah. Right, like the typical sort of like ending climatic moment. It's just repetition, just the same or different octave, right? So that's the first thing. Another thing that you can do is sequence, right? Like, let me just, right? Same thing in different parts. And this is a very short motif, right? But you can have a melody that you're just repeating in another somewhere else, right? Sequence is more when this fast sort of like short motif, but you can apply the same concept with a long melody. Then we've got inversion, right? Inversion is like if you have, for example, like, right, do-re-di-don, do-re-di-don, do-re-di-dam, do-re-di-dam, right? So if you've got this, and you have this, right? Then you can use this the same way. Inversion is like putting a mirror, like, and if it does dun 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 dun, then it would be like dun 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 dun, right? Instead of, right? Right? It's just inversion, and that can work for an entire melody, right? So if, for example, we have this, we could have this exact melody going the other way around, right? Instead of piano, instead of doing this, right? You could do, right? Or sort of thing, right? That's so that is inversion. Retrograde, you can do melodic or rhythmic. So this one here, retro, and this is basically so if we have this melody, right? So it goes like this, ton 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 ton. Retrograde is the other way around, right? It will be to ti to ta to tin. That's right. Sort of thing, right? And then you can do retrograde inversion, which is doing this plus inverting it. So you can do that. Then we've got diminution and augmentation that we saw earlier. So diminution is just if you have this melody, which is sort of like slow, then you can have a motif like, right? I just did, you didn't see it, but I just did the same thing faster. Right, it comes from the same thing. It's just a way of melodic variation, and augmentation is the same concept, just just slower, right? So and just slower, and you can extend this concept to the extreme. Like for example, you could have this. So if you have these notes, do, do, da, do, di, do, you could have these notes for the bass, right? I skipped one. I skipped this one. I didn't, it was a mistake. But I just took the same melody, I extended, right? I augmented the melody, and I used it for the notes on the bass. If you extended this even farther, more to the extreme, you could use these notes as maybe like central, like the central key or the key for like a movement, right? If you are writing a symphony, maybe you could have the first movement in C, the second in G, like the third in F sharp, right? Or something like this. So that's that. Augmentation, variation is what we've done, right? Maybe you have something like, this is your motif or your theme. Then let me just go with something that's more memorable, like so yeah. And then the second time we could do the same thing, just adding a little bit of variation. Yeah. Okay. Right, adding a little bit of variation, but using sort of like the same structure, the same thing, just adding a little bit of variation. And then contrast is that it's not variation, but it's like if you are in this sort of like maybe like action-y type of thing, and you have it's like yeah. Sort of thing. It would have a little bit more of a timbric contrast as well, so we could have the brass there, right? Something like this. So that's that. And then in terms of orchestration, we can increase, we can decrease. So increasing is the typical trailer thing, right? We've got this melody, we build the 8 bars, same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, just more bigger, and every time we add more instruments and more synths and more, it's just orchestration variation increasing, and that's it. But the melody, the harmony, it's okay with trailer music to use the same chords over and over and over and over again, and just increase the orchestration, make it sound louder, boom, and that's it, right? You have a bridge, maybe introduce something new there, and then bring back the same material over and over. It's okay, there's nothing wrong with that with trailer music. So increasing, decreasing, contrast, what we just talked, changing register, repeating the same thing, what we've seen earlier, right? The thing that we've seen with the DBC. Timbric evolution, like within sections and instruments, like having a very simple idea that you repeat it, do it once and then you repeat it, maybe with another instrument, right? Timbric variation, timbric evolution. All right, and then other type of variations we've got harmonic variation. We can have an idea, we can reharmonize it. We can add extension the second time that we repeat it. We can simplify the harmony. Then we have rhythmic variation, right? We've got ta 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 tan ta 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 tan, or like tan ta tan tan ta tan tan ta tan tan ta tan. That's the ostinato, right? We can break that ostinato, add a little bit of variation there, tan ta tan tan ta tan 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 tan, and go back to the. So that's rhythmic variation, and we can apply many of the concepts that we've used here for rhythmic variation. We can use like retrograde. So if you have tan ta tan tan ta tan, we can do it the other way around. We can add variation. We can add contrast. To that rhythm, and then other type of variation. So outside of music, outside of what's music like. Before we start talking about sound, so music with like the notes, harmony, all these things. If we there's also variation in, we can variate the sound, right? We can play around with depth, right? We can have a piano that's doing something very simple. Right, I've got it here. I could do something like I could do like. And then I'm gonna move it far away. It's much more reverb. I'm also adding some more variation. I was but you could repeat the same thing, and then you could automate the reverb, and it's farther and farther away, right? You can change panning. You can have a synth, or you can have an instrument that moves around, right? That's it. And you can and that already that alone is creating the variation that, you know, it can be very simple. Just one note, dong, like an arp note, dong. It moves away, dong, and then moves farther away to the you know, deeper and deeper, and also moving to the right side, dong, dong, and all these things. And you could do that type of automation with all the things that you have available when it comes to music production. Reverb, compression, EQ. You can have a percussion that's more loose, and you can start compressing it to gain punch and all these things. You can EQ. You can start cutting, which is very common with synths, right? The wah 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 type of thing with the filter. So you can do all sorts of things. You can create variation with the style as well. And so, for example, you can start with one style and then keep the same musical elements, the same sort of like maybe melody, but then change slightly the harmony and the orchestration to go to another style. So those things you can do if you don't have to stay in the same style, because maybe you're following a scene and it requires another style. And then you have a combination of everything. Just mentioning that if you don't have a melody, because it's not like melodic music, or it's more like contemporary music, maybe the decaphonic music, and you are working sort of like a pitch class set or something like this, where you don't have the melodic variation, right? You have all these things. You have the harmonic, you have the rhythmical variation. You can do all these things. You can modulate, right? You can do the same thing. You can move the pitch class set somewhere else. So those are things for you to remember. All right. So, but remember, it doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It has to be something that is effective. And that's sort of like what we, you know, and that's sort of what we are trying to do here. You know, every day a different style, right? And then 20 minutes or 15 minutes or 12 minutes to do something. It's like, don't think about it, just do it, right? If it serves the purpose, it serves the purpose. It has to have a quality. It has to have quality, obviously. And but don't overthink things. Do them. It's funny because when you go back, so Michael, he was a student from the first class, and he told me, you know, we did the Sadness style, and he shared the story with me. He told me I didn't have, so I finished the class, and then you told us to finish the piece. I did 20 seconds, and you told us to do 2 minutes, and then I didn't have much time, but I did it, right? I spent 40 minutes. I did it. Well, I wasn't very proud, but I just did it. Okay, and then in the evening, you know, the kids got home, and I showed them the music, I showed them the track, and they said, "Wow, Dad, this sounds so sad," and he was so you know, it meant so much for him, because he didn't compose music. He's not a composer. It was the first time that he wasn't a composer, and so it's the first time that he was composing music. So he composed Love in the last week, and then Sadness the next week, and then showed to his kids, and they were like, it sounds so sad. It meant so much for him, because actually he was trying to compose a sad track. So he didn't overthink it. He just did it. And for someone else who's not you, the composer, who are judging everything that you do, it sort of like served the purpose. He was trying to write sad music, and that was sad music. Sometimes you don't have to overthink things. So, you know, and try to focus on the music, not on the idea what your music should be. Remember that where focus goes, energy flows. So if you focus on the music, the energy goes to the music, and the good ideas go to creating the music. If you focus on this should be a masterpiece, then you are creating that problem, and the energy goes to the problem, not to the solution of actually writing the music. All right, so that's that. And then sometimes I get the question when it comes to development, it's like, but I don't know enough about theory and harmony orchestration. You know, master the style instead. Master the style and write different styles, and when you start the practice doing the thing creates that practice and creates, you're gonna master all these things while doing, not studying. You can study the books, you can spend as much time as I did, right, 15 years, but still it's the doing what's gonna make you master that. All right, so this is the end of the class. I hope you enjoyed the class and that you got some value out of the class. Just a couple of reminders. Tomorrow we've got the class at the same time. We're going to be talking about action meet intensity. Also, make sure to check out the calendar for the following masterclass that we're going to have usually in the afternoons, sometime between after this class and noon or 1 p.m. So check out the calendar. We've got all the master classes scheduled there. We've got the morning classes, which is what we are doing, what we just finished. And then we've got the master classes with the expert composers, mixing engineers, and orchestrators that are participating in this summit. So check out the calendar. And then remember that on Friday, we're going to have the live Q&A session as well. So with that, I'll leave you here. I'll see you tomorrow with Action Meet Intensity.